Wildlife Refuge in Indiana. That's where they congregate first, I guess. But they've been pretty active. We heard them yesterday too. We're only a few miles away from O'Hare, and that's always a little scary to think that all these large birds are flying around. Yeah, I figured you'd answer, Ken, because we ran into Ken, my wife and I, at Horicon, 2 years ago. We didn't see any cars or anything, and my wife is talking to somebody when a car is coming down a dirt road, and is like, who is she talking with? We haven't seen or talked to anybody. It's the middle of pandemic, and it's Ken.
Ken's up there a lot.
Well, I didn't get up there as much as I wanted to this year, but I did make a few trips up there.
Last call for anybody that wants to join the panel. Please raise your Zoom hand. Glad to have you on board. Share your knowledge with everybody else. Looks like we're getting a good sized group today. And for those of you that aren't on the panel, please start thinking of questions to ask us for problems that you have.
Jeff, the speaker today in the second hour is about drones, right?
It's Dan Anderson.
And he's speaking of...
speaking on drones, yeah.
Oh, okay, because I got an email, something about the presentation from last month, I think.
Right, I keep screwing up the email part on Zoom. There's so many things you got to change every month, and I don't change it till after the meeting, and I changed a bunch of it, but I forgot to change the email that goes out. And Dan noticed it, and I changed it for this morning's email that went out. But you are getting my main email that I send out like a week before.
Yeah,
that talks about Dan or whoever's going to be speaking. So it's my fault all the time. It's just too many things to try to change, and I don't want to change it until after this meeting. And sometimes I forget that section of the email.
I just wanted to make sure. I wasn't sure if it had been changed or if it was an error. I just assumed it would be an error. I figured I'd find out this morning.
Yep. No, Dan Anderson is coming, so he will be here soon, undoubtedly. So let's get started. Excuse me. Welcome everybody to the Digital Forum. We're a group of people that answer photography questions during the day today. Our first hour will be general Q&A. The second hour will be Dan Anderson on drone photography. And I see he's just popped in. He'll get settled in and be joining us for the second hour. I've got a number of different speakers getting lined up for Digital Forum. For December, we won't be meeting because that's Christmas Eve. But there will be a video presentation I'll put out for that month. January, we're hoping to have Jamie Karowski Davidson on infrared photography, more in the abstract type of infrared photography. I've got Jim Kopnick. He's from EAA, and he'll be talking about aviation photography in February. And in March, we have Mike Mazel coming, or Mazul, I should say, from talking about volcano photography. So we got January, February, March lined up. So it should be an interesting 2023 start. I'm going to continue to try to get a speaker for every month next year. So if people have suggestions on people they would like to have, please let us know. We do have a very limited budget, so We cannot spend a ton of money on speakers, not yet at least, but we'll continue to bring speakers in as often as we can. So let's get started. The first question we've got is from Ken Bowman. There seem to be some new file formats with the mirrorless cameras. CRAW and HEIF are confusing me. What are they? Should I use the CRAW or RAW? I accidentally created some HEIF files and they can't be imported by Lightroom and opened in Photoshop.
HEIF is is an Apple format.
Yeah, and that should be read by Lightroom.
I had that same problem several months ago, and I found out that from the Microsoft Store, you buy a converter for $2.99, and it converts the HEIF, which into a JPEG or maybe whatever format you want.
Yeah.
And I believe it's created because your iPhone is on live. If you swipe the iPhone,
Oh,
you
yeah,
see
that,
movement
Yeah,
in the
that-
picture.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually not true. There is actually just a setting in there. You can choose HEIF or JPEG files on the iPhone. What it does is the HEIF compresses the file down. And as far as the converters for PCs, there actually are free converters out there because I found those that work. So you don't have to pay for a converter.
Oh,
But
well,
Jeff, is there
you're the
a
lucky one.
setting, Jeff? Well, there is. I mean, there's several free ones on Microsoft's marketplace thing. Jeff, is there a setting within Lightroom that you just need to enable to be able to accept an HEIF file?
no, I could swear that Lightroom could
Yeah,
accept
Jeff, I
that.
think you're right, because I had someone send me some HEIF files and I looked at them in Lightroom with no problem, and then I converted.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they should be. Now the CRAW, I'm not sure which camera is putting out the CRAW file. Every mirrorless camera and every new one that comes out, they change the raw file format. So you get a lot of different ones. Nikon is NEF and Canon is CRW. Right? CRW?
I
Yeah.
think that's right.
I think
Yeah.
that's right.
No, it
I'm
might
not
be
sure
Sorry.
what
It
Sony
might be
is.
the version of Lightroom. If they don't have upgrade to the latest version, it may not read that.
And that could be the thing, is if you're running an old version of Lightroom, it wouldn't read it, but it should be able to read the current version in the current version. Because Lightroom generally can read any raw file up to something that maybe was just announced 3 months ago, because it takes them 2-3 months.
Yes, Jeff, I just loaded a iPhone photo into Lightroom and it reads it fine. And you go down to the film strip and it says it's an HEIC file. So
Okay,
Lightroom is able to read that. I've got the most current Lightroom.
yeah.
And I don't know
Yeah.
if Ken's on a Mac or not, but if he's on a Mac, it's easy enough to convert HEIFs using Preview also.
Right. He's on a PC, so.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as I know, Lightroom sometimes gets behind on adding the different new RAW supports, but generally it's only 2 months, maybe 3 months behind. And from when a new camera comes out, the silly part is that none of the camera companies will give Adobe how their raw files work. So Lightroom has to actually go in and, or Adobe has to go in and figure out those raw file formats by themselves.
Reverse engineering.
Yeah. And it takes them a month or 2, sometimes 3 to get it. But I would
My
think.
new Fuji, the Adobe had the new XT5 files ready to process from day one. So I don't know how all that worked, but apparently I'm guessing that Fuji probably give them the information early, so.
Yeah, I would think the camera companies would be smart just to give them that info. But
You would think so.
yeah. So,
I just checked my Canon mirrorless camera and there is, under image quality, there is a choice for RAW and CRAW, which I wasn't.
oh, okay.
And so if I turn it to CRAW, it says the same resolution. So I'm not sure. Yeah, it says it's the same resolution. Oh. The number in parentheses or brackets goes higher when I choose.
Interesting. I know Nikon has a number of raw NEF versions, but some are compressed and some aren't. I'm wondering if the C-RAW is non-compressed or is compressed more, unless it's a
So
video version.
It's interesting in under the Q&A, Ken mentions that the HEIF was created with a Canon R7. It was originally an Apple developed format, but it is open, I think, to anybody to use. So Canon must have adopted it then.
Yeah. Interesting. It's a high efficiency image file. And
So not having a mirrorless camera, I don't know, there must be settings within there to be able to choose that format then.
yeah. It's just there's different advantages. I gotta admit, I never used it, but I'm pretty sure that they talk somewhere in this one thing about it that it should be able to be opened by.
I just posted a link to the Adobe website that speaks about HEIF files and how to use them.
Okay, do they have something special that you have to do?
It doesn't look like anything special. I mean, this is a whole page, pros, cons.
Oh yeah, I think I'm on the same page.
Yeah, but that's right from Adobe.
Yeah, so they know about it, so it's gotta be, I would, too much here to read, but I would think that I've never used the HEIF file, but it's taken on Apple devices, so.
Yeah, that's the basic file format off of an
Yeah.
iPhone or an iPad or something like that.
Yeah. See, I usually, when I do RAW on my iPhone, I use the DNG format in the Lightroom app so that I can use that file format. 'Cause I like the
What I
Lightroom
found
phone.
was that when, kind of several times that when you had the live on your iPhone or iPad, that's what creates the HEIF. And I've had to do the runaround on the iPhone or iPad to find out how to turn that off. And you can tell it's an HEIF when you're swiping on the phone, you'll see the image move. Like there are
Oh,
several
that's-
shots.
Yeah, okay.
It's not the basic format.
It is though. It is, Anthony. It is. It's
Well,
the default format. On the iPhone, it's the default format you need if you don't want to have HEIF. There is a setting under the camera that you can go and change the format to being just a JPEG, but it's the default format regardless of what you're shooting.
Right.
Oh, I haven't found that, mine, when I got my new phone a few months ago, it was JPEG and then I must have touched the top to turn on live.
Yeah,
So, and then when I saw the images, oh yeah, that's on. So I had to go in and manually change it back to JPEG. So that's why I'm mentioning it.
Yeah,
That-
interesting.
that makes sense because that live format is actually a short video.
Right.
And so you can't really do much with Lightroom with the short video part. So that's where he's having the problem, is that it's a video format, probably more than a standard, just regular file format. And in Lightroom, you're very limited on the editing capabilities in video. So you're sort of get stuck there. What I end up doing with those is then I pull a JPEG out of it from the video as a single frame, and then you're able to edit that frame, and then you can actually apply those adjustments to that whole short video. So if that's maybe what it is. Now, I would still think that if it's not the video one, if it's just a single frame, then it should be readable in Lightroom. But Jerry Hying put a link in the chat where you can find out about the HEIF files. So, yeah, and that's right through Adobe's website. So there could be, and the C-RAW is just the Steve Youngerworth was saying is the compressed Canon format. It's about half the size of RAW, same resolution. So I know Nikon has that too, or they have a RAW file format that's compressed and works pretty decent. So hopefully that answered everybody's question on that. Next question we have is from Mark Blackman. Has anyone purchased used equipment through any of the sites like KEH or MPB? Good or bad experiences? I know I've sold a lot of equipment, and I know a couple of people that have sold equipment to KEH quite often. They pay wholesale prices, so you get about half of what you'd get selling at retail, but they're pretty good about it. You send the equipment into them, they'll look at it and tell you, they'll give you an estimate on their website, but then you send it in. Then they'll look at it, see if the quality is what you had said, and will tell you, here's the value we'll place on it. And if you approve it, they send you a check. If you don't approve it, they send the equipment back free of charge. I've never bought equipment from them, so I'm not sure. But knowing how picky they are on the equipment that they do purchase and how well they label the quality of that equipment, KEH has been my place that I would look at first.
And they've
Next
been
to-
around forever. You know, if
Yeah.
they weren't doing a good job, they wouldn't be around as long as they've been around.
Yeah. So I know it's a good place to sell equipment if you don't want to go through the hassles of selling it to somebody you know, especially if you worry that maybe you sell it to somebody and it breaks next week and it gets you in trouble. Selling it to a place like this, it's done and they go over it and they make sure everything is working right, and then they just go about and resell it. So works out pretty good that way. We've got Gerald Gifford. The compressed RAW format has been developed using Sony's unique compression technology. C-RAW. This format compresses RAW files to 60–70% of the original size, maintains the fine detail. So that sort of helps. And his R5 has the C-RAW format. Nikon, I know, has their own. So yeah, it looks like Sony, yeah, maybe Sony made Nikons too, for all I know. Since it's a Sony center, most of the Nikon cameras. Any other questions? Come on, people.
Hey, is it
Uh,
true that Lightroom and Photoshop went up double in price?
No,
No, okay, I thought it did.
no, it's still $9.95 a month.
Okay, unless they plan on changing that next year. I thought I heard
I
that.
haven't heard, I haven't been told
Okay.
that, not that I hear a lot of it, but let's see, I can tell you right now because I just saw it. Where'd it go? Yeah, my all apps price is still $54.99. Of course, they don't have the photo. Now they got this. If you do the single Photoshop, it is $21, but you're better off doing that whole regular setup, the photo setup. Oh, the only thing I hate about Adobe is their website really stinks.
I think that one with just Photoshop offers a lot more cloud space, Jeff, doesn't it?
Probably. Yeah, and they do have a regular photography one with 1 terabyte of cloud space for $20. But the one that you really want is the regular photography one, which I never understand why they make it so hard to find all of these. Yeah, it's the standard Lightroom one is $9.99. And the photography one, which has Lightroom and Photoshop, is $9.99 a month. And actually you can save on that even a little bit if you buy it for a year at one time.
Okay, yeah, thank you for looking into that. Maybe I misunderstood someone.
Yeah, that rumor seems to pop up pretty often. But usually from people that don't like Adobe's subscription setup. But there are a lot of nice Black Friday sales going on. I don't know if anybody's checked all those out or if anybody's been spending their money this weekend on it. I've been a good boy so far. I only updated my Topaz stuff, so which they had a nice saving. Topaz had a nice savings on that, but Luminar has a nice big discount going right now on all the Luminar stuff. On1 has a good discount going. DxO has 50% off on most of their apps. So, and a lot of good specials on camera equipment, which I'm in good shape. I'm waiting for a new Nikon camera, so waiting for the next one to come out. Next other question we've got is Ken Bowman's asking what the special themes for the Wacko Spring competition are. Ken, how's your memory?
I will look
Actually-
it up, okay? It won't
Okay.
take me long at all.
All right, great. Because otherwise I could go, the Wacko website also has it, so. So if you go there under competitions, I updated that section. So Ken will know in a minute on that.
Nature projected, there would be insects, reptiles, and amphibians. Open projected, photojournals and sports. Does that sound right, Jeff?
That sounds
That's
right.
correct. That's correct.
Marty's quicker on the website than I could pull it.
Yeah, yeah.
While we're talking a little bit about Wacko, for those of you in Wacko clubs, we have sent out a survey that we would love for you to answer and send back to me. Hopefully, most of you, the club should have gotten that survey from their delegates by now. And I also sent it out through our Wacko newsletter. And actually, we'll take anybody that I sent it to through the Wacko newsletter, if you can fill that out. We're trying to decide if we want to bring back in-person photo seminars again. And so we would love your opinions on that. It takes less than 5 minutes to fill out that survey and send it back. So please send that out and do that when you get a chance. Well, come on. Anybody else have questions? There's got to be questions. We've got 40 people today. Everybody's got everything working right on their equipment. Wow.
Maybe they're too stuffed from the turkey.
Yeah, they're all just sitting back.
Did I mention that I purchased the Epson ink tank printer a few months ago?
Oh, did you?
Yes, I
Yep.
did. It, even though it's $400, it has tanks in there that you can see the level of the ink, and you get the bottles and you fill the tanks. And we've been doing more printing than usual these past few months. And I haven't seen the level of the inks go down. Supposedly you can get 30,000 pages, I believe, on the set. So I'm saving a lot on, by this time I would have had to have replaced the cartridges on the old Epson. So
Is that a regular inkjet printer or is it a photo printer?
it can do everything. Scanner, fax, photos.
Well, they don't use the, most of the photo printers use like 9 colors.
No,
Well,
this
this
is not
has-
a photo printer. It's, I wouldn't use it for printing photos. It works fine for colored letters with colors in it, but it does not do good with photos. I'm the one who recommended it to you, Tony, and I still have over half a tank of ink on all of my, we've got 3 colors and then black.
Yeah.
But
I don't print photos, but I just, our cartridges would last up at most 3 months, with just the few sheets. I don't know why. So I got this and we just leave it on all the time. And it's slower than the older one, but it hasn't used enough, hardly any ink. So I'm happy with that.
Where do you get the ink to refill it?
I haven't had to refill it, so I don't, but it comes in bottles about, so big, like 4 inches tall, whatever. You just, you open up the printer, open up the cap and squeeze the ink in.
So
Yeah.
several bottles came with the printer when you bought it?
Yeah, yes, a bottle of each color. And somebody had said that, on the reviews that it didn't fill up each tank, that it was like, short, they were shorted on ink, but mine filled it up, and it's, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I'm wondering how that works with the ink drying up, if it has the same problem. I've had a problem with my little inkjet printer of the cartridges drying, the jets drying up with the ink in them.
Oh, well, we've had it for several months, and we just, like I said, we leave it on, it goes to sleep, but it wakes up when you send stuff from the computers, your handheld devices, whatever, and prints away. And there were a couple of weeks where we weren't home, and when we came back, we printed something and it was no problem. So it doesn't appear to dry up.
Yeah, I've had that problem with my last 2 or 3 printers, and it takes a lot to clean them. And the one that I have now, I can't get it clean, and I'm wondering if I'm going to have to replace it.
Yeah, for my office stuff, I still use a laser printer because I don't print enough stuff anymore. And I found the laser cartridges, they don't go bad. They just sit there and they give me some pretty decent results for office stuff, but I've actually gone to a paperless office, so I hardly print anything. So the one inkjet printer for office stuff is constantly, like you, Drama, dried out, and then I have to go through so many cleaning cycles to get it working again, and then it works fine. Actually, I have that same main problem with my photo printer because I don't print that often.
What kind of printer is your photo printer?
I've got an Epson 3800. It's pretty old. And the good part about it being that old is the heads are bigger and they're easier to unclog over some of the newer, from what I've heard from the newer printers. But
I've been surprised about my printer, my photo printer. I was just printing this week after not having printed for a couple months. And, you know, I try to print every couple weeks at least if I'm not going through any. And I've had that printer now for about 4 or 5 years. And I've heard other people say that if they let it sit, it clogs up. And I've not had a problem with my Epson printer at all.
Yeah,
some of them do, yeah.
Mine is plugged up. I'm gonna have to take Jeff's suggestion about trying that ammonia to try and clean up my nozzles because it's plugged up.
What
Yeah.
kind do you have?
I have the 4-in-1.
Epson?
Yeah, the Epson. I think it's the 3600 series or something. Let's see here. 3620.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does take a lot of ink, and to fill up all the cartridges is about, I think it costs almost $600 for the full set of cartridges for my printer, which is the 40-something series, I think.
Yeah.
I've got an Epson 1430 large format printer, and so far I haven't had any issues with quality on it. The one time I did, I realized I was selecting the wrong paper type, you know, whether matte quality or photo. That makes a big difference on the quality of your final print. So always, I mean, my recommendation would be to double check that when you go to print, that you've got that your print settings match the paper you want to use. But
Yeah.
I agree. The Epson printers, since I've gone to the Epson printers, I have had very, very few problems. And this is the size of the cartridge in my Epson.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
That's,
could get, I'm surprised at how many prints I get out of a set of cartridges. And I've got 6 cartridges in mine, and they're about $20 a piece, maybe $22 a piece.
yeah.
So that's not too bad. I only changed, I changed the ink in it maybe once a year.
No, that's pretty good. My cartridges are 4 times as big. They're more like Drema's.
Yeah.
The 3800 takes a good size cartridge, and they're like $55 a cartridge. And
Have
there's
you bought-
9 of them.
Have you bought any recently? Because the prices went up almost.
Yeah, they're
25%.
undoubtedly. I've been running off of old ones that I have. So I'm doing well with the old ones yet, but like I said, I don't print much, and I used to have a 7600, which was a 24-inch printer, and those cartridges were $90 to $140 a cartridge.
Be careful with the expiration date, Jeffrey, on those too, because I've noticed, I used to do that too. I kept a backup set that I bought, and then they might last a year or two. And I noticed the last time I was putting one in, the expiration date of the ink had passed.
Yeah, you got to make sure that you shake those cartridges up really well, especially if they've been sitting a long time, to get that ink mixed back in. Is the one thing I found. Yeah, I don't like using old cartridges, but it's I'm not going to throw them out because they're too expensive, and I just haven't had a need to print. Now I know Dan's printed a lot, undoubtedly he's still printing every day. So he must go through cartridges like crazy, and so he stays with fresh cartridges. But
Buy some
And-
stock in that.
yeah, and Canon printers, I'm not sure if they work the same if when you change. I guess it's probably not changing that print head on the Canon big printers either. So Canon, I think, is running ink through just as the same as the Epson does. So it's just that the best thing to do is always try to run that printer. If nothing else, run a cleaning cycle once a month. Keep those heads open and clear. Because once they get clogged, it's a real pain to get those unclogged. And the more you print, the better it is. But I've just have to run through too many printing cycles for my Epson that I've actually gone to be sending out my stuff for printing more than I do using my printer, because I've got a job right now where I got to print 4 lousy 5x7s, and if I print them using my Epson, I'll go through about $20 worth of ink just to get them to print the 4 lousy prints. And I can send those out and get them printed for $4 a piece at my lab, and not go through all the hassle, which is pretty sad. So it creates for me a spiral of I'm using my printer yet less and less. But
I
hoping
just
to get
looked
back
up,
to printing more.
I just looked up the cost of the refill bottles, and they run anywhere from $42 to $60 for the 4 bottles total in
Yeah,
the combo pack. So I was spending like $80 for the 4 cartridges, you know, and that wouldn't last very long. So we'll see over time.
yeah.
Do they
Well,
show a
that's the-
size? Do they show a size? How many? Like, let's say if it's 250 milliliters or 500 milliliters on that.
Oh,
It's
I
a
didn't-
it's a large amount of ink. You're paying for the cartridge more than the ink itself. So, and
Correct.
Epson makes their money on their selling their inks, not their printers. So, but okay. Well, going back
60
to
Oh, never mind.
Oh.
I thought I had it, but
okay, going back to the C-RAW, just for people to know, Canon C-RAW is 23.5 megabyte file for, I think he said he had an was it an R5 or something? And the regular RAW file was 49.4, so it cut it a little more than half in size. They both have the same .cr3 file format name, so that gives you an idea on that. With Jane Hurst is asking, what are all the uses for the Topaz Gigapixel plugin? And there's a few. I don't use it for a lot. I do have it, and we'll see what other people have to say too. I use it when I have a file that I've cropped quite a bit, and I need to make it a file big enough to be able to do some larger printing. And it works pretty good as long as you don't have too small of a file. It does do some amazing enlargements in adding pixels. It's probably one of the better ones that I've seen. Adobe does a pretty good job by itself. They have their special enlarging section that works pretty well. I know Matt Klaskowski has used both, and he still likes using the Adobe one better than Topaz Gigapixel. But if you have something that you've had to crop, say 50%, you can get that 50% back pretty well. I don't know, has anybody else tried it and worked with it?
Yeah, I have. I find it works incredibly well. I use it for the same reasons you do, Jeff. after you've cropped an image, you want to recover pixels in the image. I've also, I used to shoot JPEG all the time for a long time before I switched to RAW. And I can take JPEGs, 6-megapixel JPEGs with my old Nikon D70 and transform the images and get a better quality image.
Yeah.
Would you guys recommend first using that gigapixel first before you would crop the picture?
No, I would crop it first and then do it, because it's not going to get you be any different. And why make a file that's going to be humongous before you crop it? You might as well wait till you do the crop.
Right, and it's going to take you more time, processing time.
Correct. I wasn't quite sure if it would get just maybe a touch better quality on the picture itself. So, okay.
No, because once
I'm
Yeah.
listening here, and I do use gigapixel a lot. Not on my R5, but on all of my drone images. If I'm going to print them, and that's what I do mostly, I use gigapixel on every file to bring them from, let's say the native size is about 14 inches on the long side, and I bring it up to 21 inches on the long side through gigapixel.
yeah,
And I use gigapixel before I would use any sharpening, before I would use denoise or anything like that,
Mhm.
or crop.
okay. Great. Yeah, I only use it when I absolutely have to, so it's not too often.
Well, I'm a creature of habit. So if it's a drone image, a drone file, it gets gigapixeled. And I like it a lot. I've made large prints without it and with it, and there's a clear difference.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I remember the old day before any of that was there, and I had a Nikon D3 that I had to do a 15-foot by 24-foot print from it. And that was a 6-megapixel camera. And we did it through Photoshop, but it was a 10% increment up. And there were a lot of 10% to get to 15 by 24 foot. And it's amazing. You could still see people's faces, but that also, the printing was a lot different than what a photo print would be. So, so things could be done, but yeah, Gigapixel's been a pretty good. It's a program I go to when somebody sends me a small file and I got to make it big enough for print in a newsletter or something. I'm able to rescue a lot of photos that way. So I use it more in that area, but Dan certainly has a good reason for doing it his way. Okay. Yeah, we got
Jeffrey,
that.
someone's talking about the chat being disabled again.
Is the oh dang. I wish I could figure that one out. I know where it is too. Okay, now the chat's open again. Sorry about that, everybody. I got to create a new checklist for that.
You see, Jane weighed in with her Canon Pro 100 printer, and sounds like she's had pretty good luck with that.
Yeah.
Myself, not for photos, but just general printing, I've been using an HP OfficeJet for years, and I get good yield from the inks on it, and I've never once ever had heads clogging up on that.
Now I gotta say my laser printer never clogs. It runs out of expensive dust once in a while, but it never clogs.
And the closest I get to doing photo printing at home, I've got a 4x6 Canon, one of those selfie printers, which you get really nice results out of, but it's expensive per print to do them. So I use it sparingly, but because it's a ribbon based type of a product, it can sit for months and months and go back to using it and not have any issues with that one either.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's,
I've been very lucky. I've had an Epson R2880. I think it's at least 15 years old.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
that thing is
there's an
still-
oldie.
And it still puts along. I just printed an exhibit last week and it just flawlessly. And to my knowledge, I've never had any clogging going on in that thing in all the years I've had it. And then for my desktop printing, I have an HP 8100 and I've had that thing at least 8-9 years. And that thing just keeps putting along. The cartridges are a bit expensive, but it's never failed me anyway. So it's worked out good. So I just consider myself lucky, and I've got whatever time I talk about it. So
Yeah. Well, some of those older HP cartridges, those were cartridges that when you replace the ink, you were also replacing the print head at the same time. And that way you always kept getting a new print head, so it wouldn't clog near as easy as some of the Epsons, which don't have the print. It's a print head that just keeps getting used over and over again, so they clog up easier. And Roger Krill just brought that the same thing up, is that the HP cartridges have print heads in them. I think the new stuff doesn't, but I believe the old stuff did. So that's always
Yeah,
been a
the-
problem.
yeah, the 2880 is the same vintage as your 3800, I think. So
Yeah, it's
Same
pretty
time frame.
much. And those older print heads, the print heads, the openings are slightly bigger. It's not as fine of a print nozzle as the new stuff. And that's why they tend not to plug up quite as much as the newer print heads do. Now you get a lot better detail with the new print heads, but you sometimes, from what I could see and talking to a couple of people that have some of the newer stuff, they were having more clogs a little more often when they weren't using it enough, that they had to go through a lot of tricks to get them unclogged sometimes. But there's a lot of good ways that you can find on YouTube for unclogging them if they get clogged real bad. But most of them, you need to soak that head to get it moist again. And you need to turn them off so that they go and the print heads go and sit into the bed that keeps the print head protected and moist. So
I don't like to say anything out loud about clogging,
Yeah.
because my P7000 works quite well, and it's rare that I get a clog. And when I
Yeah.
do, it self-cleans with ease.
yeah,
I should never, ever say things like that out loud, though.
I'm knocking on wood every time.
Right,
But
exactly.
I'm pretty sure, Dan, you probably print a lot more than most of us do, and that's certainly what
print-
helps keep it.
I might print a lot, but I do not print every day.
Yeah,
It could go a couple weeks, like I was just gone for a while. That's a month that I wasn't.
yeah, that's
printing.
true.
And it's, it seems to be fine. And
Well,
I
that's-
also don't have to go through ink that often. I've got 350 milliliter ink cartridges in my printer, and there's 9 of them, and
Yeah.
each one is like $145. So that sounds just awful, but I don't think I ever have had to buy more than one at a time, because all the colors run out at different rates.
Yeah.
And so I have to buy ink maybe once a year, twice a year at the most. So I don't consider that a big deal at all.
No,
So I think my printer, that P7000, is a pretty delicate sipper of ink.
yeah, it sounds like it. I know the new ones work great, and I'd love to justify buying one again. I miss my 24-inch one that I just actually trashed because it just wasn't using it enough, and clogged up to the point that I couldn't get one set of one side unclogged, and just ended up trashing the whole thing.
Well, the
Plus I couldn't get
big
print drivers
problem-
for the new
The
one.
big problem about a 24-inch or any of the, the large Epson printers is if something does happen to that print head, you've got to buy a new print head, and the new print head is virtually as expensive as a new printer.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
I had that happen to an older printer, not to this one, but it is not a pleasant thing to find out that you need to buy a new head. And it almost makes more sense just to buy a new printer at that point.
yeah. Most of the time it seems to be, and that's where I was at. Plus the 7600 was a 15-year-old printer, and getting the drivers for it, Epson wasn't updating the drivers very quickly. And as Apple kept updating their programs, I had to keep using the last time I had to use an older computer to be able to print. So I don't think even the brand new operating system would even work with the driver they had. So it was getting to be a problem. Let's see, where are we here?
There's
Yeah,
a question in the chat there, Jeff.
Yeah, what printing companies do the panelists and I use? I use Epson printers.
No, printing companies. I think he's referring to
Printing
like,
companies. Okay. I use Bay Photo in California for all my printing. They do a great job. Plus, they can print on so many different types of surfaces. They have a simple setup for ordering. And you can do prints, you can do acrylic, you can do canvas, metal prints, photo prints, inkjet prints, cards.
I see they just announced the metal print that you can stick and restick to the wall up to 5 times. So you can print them, move them around to different areas.
Oh yeah, who was that?
That was Bay Photo.
Was that Bay Photo? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been using them for metal prints, and the first one I did came out darker than I wanted, just like on my other printer, my Epson printer at home. Often comes out darker because of the calibration. But they suggested, I called them and they suggested that I send them a guide print. And the last couple of prints I've done, I've put in the order, and then I have to go back and tell them not to print it right away because to wait for the guide print. And then I print something the way I want it and send it to them, and it's come out beautifully. They charge $20 for that though. So
yeah, they will charge.
yeah, I told them I thought it would be the other way around because they're guaranteed that the customer is going to be happy with the picture. And so rather than, if you have them adjust the color, they don't charge you, but
I've used that from them ever since I've been using Bay Photo, and I've never had an image come back where I was unhappy with it. So I just let them choose the color. They're professionals. They almost know what they're doing.
I had a picture, a large picture on an exhibition in California this summer, and it had to go through the juried process, and the JPEG that I sent to them was approved for exhibition. And so I then had Bay Photo print it large. And when I got it, it was much, much lighter than the one that the JPEG that I had sent in. And so I had to make them reprint it. They do that. They guarantee it if they adjust the color.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I liked it better actually, the way they printed it, but it wasn't matching the JPEG. And so I had to make them reprint it.
Yeah. But they did. And that's the nice thing about it. Like you say, they're guaranteeing it. And so dollar for dollar, the printing at home versus sending it out to a lab just doesn't even equate for most average users, I would say.
Yeah.
I know
If you're
what-
doing when I was doing a lot of commercial printing, it works because you're running enough and you've got your system calibrated so that what you see on your monitor is what you're going to get on your printer, and it works pretty well. But yeah, only if you're doing a lot of it. And there are a lot of good labs. Allied Digital Photo in Germantown is another lab that I use for a local lab.
I've used
Um,
Mike Crivello's and Arts
Yeah.
for, you know, at different times
Yeah.
and after the first time at each place, I said, because they would always go in and color correct, and then I would tell them, no, there's no need to color correct, just print. And we eventually had it worked out that I was very pleased with the 21 by 17 by 21 inch prints that I would be getting done at Arts. They come back absolutely perfect. And at Mike Crivello's, I do a lot of the small ones, you know, 8 by 10s, 4 by 6s, 5 by 7s. And I got to know the lab people, and they actually, one of them told me, oh, we enjoy doing your pictures because you know what you want, and we just run them through, and they come back and they would match what I had sent them, you know, what I would see on my screen. So if it's somebody local, you know, a lot of times you can get a working relationship with them.
Yeah.
And like I say, I've had good luck at Arts and Mike Crivello's.
Someone there in the question and answer asked or mentioned Costco photos, and they used to do it in store, and everyone in our club in California used to use them, but they allow you to download the what do you call it, the color, I'm blanking out on the word,
Calibration image.
Profile.
the color
Profile,
profile.
yes.
And then you could match it up and send it in and get Costco did a pretty good job, and I guess they're still doing it online. But I used to use them before I bought my big printer 5 or 6 years ago.
A lot of stuff
Yeah.
I do is from Walgreens and that 8 by 10 and smaller.
Okay.
Once in a blue moon, I have done, but that was up in the UP. I've done Walmart and that, but you know, I think I like Walgreens about the best. But Mike Crivello's and stuff like that, Arts, and of course Bay by far, you know, are more superior.
Yeah, I mean, you got White House Color, MPix, or Miller Photo, I should say. MPix is kind of their consumer end of it. There's a whole host of really good pro labs out there, and they all do a really good job. American
Yeah.
Color would be another one.
Yeah. They all will get it done usually pretty close, and you know, Bay Photo and MPix and White House and that, they're all so set up for commercial photographers that they generally, once you get it worked out with them for the color profiles and that, will work pretty well. But you should have your monitor calibrated, of course, and that will certainly help get you closer. So, okay. Yeah, we got printer ink pays for your printer hardware, and that's about right. That's what they sell printers for, is so they can make their money on the ink. All right, I think we're got any other questions? I'm just looking through everything to make sure.
I got a bunch of stuff going on in chat again too, so
Yeah.
if you wanna.
Yeah, I think Costco only does stuff online. They've gotten rid of all their in-lab stuff that pretty much was, I think they found out was too much trouble trying to do it themselves. At least, yeah, I don't think I've seen, Pewaukee had the last lab that I saw. Menominee Falls hardly even had a lab set up. Yeah.
I wonder if they're still doing the allowing you to download their profiles, because that was the thing that made it so accurate. If you found out what printers they were using in the store, then you could get the profile for that printer and get your picture more guaranteed to get the right color.
Yeah. I'm not sure anymore. I know Ken used them for some of the Milwaukee Youth Showcase photos for a while because we would make sure that everything was just right when we sent it to them, and they did a nice job for an inexpensive 8x10 print. It's not anything I would certainly use for important stuff, but for general use. Paul Mortal's asking what a profile is. A profile is basically it gives a definition.
It's a set of specs that they're using off the International Color Profiling System. So they'll set up their monitors to those specific specs. As Rama alluded to, you can get those specs from the labs, and you can match your color monitor specs if you are calibrating a monitor to those specs.
Yeah. So it's a lookup table is this easiest other term for it, and it compares what a color should be and what the monitor is showing and putting out, and that's a way to equalize everything from lab to labs because they all use the standard profile. And then there's different profiles for different types of paper and for different printing machines, and that all works hand in hand. And even with the different inks, I would make a new profile every time I changed my inks and paper, especially if I changed to a big new batch of ink. I sometimes, well, that was back in the older days, so when you had to do it more.
It does assume that your monitor is calibrated first.
Yeah.
Because
That too.
the monitor isn't calibrated, then a profile doesn't have a real good starting point to go from to another calibrated printing service.
Yep, correct. So it's a big point to have everything calibrated in your system. Have your monitor calibrated so that you've got can use those profiles, and generally that works out the easiest. Well, I see we're at 11 o'clock and we were petering out here as it is. So I want to welcome Dan Anderson, who's chipped in already here. So he's helping us out, answering a lot of questions since he's also an expert printer. I consider him an expert printer. And his artwork is just super. He blows my mind every time I see some of his new stuff. And today he's graciously come to talk about drone photography and his how he does drone photography and the photos that he creates with them. And he's up in Door County, Wisconsin. He does a lot of photo tours. He's an excellent photographer, teacher, you name it. So I'll turn it over to you, Dan.
Okay, I'll hit share screen here.
Yep.
And then we'll go here. There's my play. All right. Can
Yep.
everybody
Looks-
see that then?
Yep. Looks
All right.
good.
Okie doke.
I don't have you. What do I gotta push?
You
This is
should be
so-
able to see him. You should be able to see his drone landscape photography slide.
No, I'm on two screens. Is there actually? I lost you halfway through your talk earlier, but
So if somebody,
Um,
if some of you
okay.
can see it, then at least it's not me.
okay.
No,
I
it's
can
not
see
you,
it.
Dan.
Okay.
It's let me see if I can Philip, if you go to your Zoom drop down where it says window and go down to move focus to next window.
I have to find your Zoom. Sorry. How about if I come in and back in, okay?
Sure, you can do that, and that will probably bring it all back. That sometimes is the easiest.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
All right, shall we get started?
Yes, please.
All right,
Thank you.
So as Jeff has been saying, I make prints. That's the main output of my photography. So every camera that I use, everything that I do is geared to trying to make as good a print as I can, because I put them in galleries, and my main output is to sell fine art, black and white, it used to be, but fine art prints. So when drone photography first came out, or when I first saw a drone working, I was very, very intrigued. And it told me that one of the frustrations that I've had always is that maybe now I could get just a little bit higher. And that's really what I was looking for. So I can go into the history of my drones and things like that, but we'll do that as time goes on here and as I keep talking. And of course, you can stop me with questions at any particular time. But this would be an example of what I'm looking for in my drone work. I love nice weather. I mean, I consider this nice weather. And in a situation like this, I put my drone up. I have no idea what's going to happen. I don't have any idea what I'm going to see, what's going to really interest me, but I can get that drone around the sky and around the subject so fast that I can compose something like this. And all the wind-blown patterns on the water are what really caught my attention here and why I picked this particular one versus something else. And then, of course, the clouds and things like that. But why use my drone? As I said, my initial thought was that I just wanted to get a little bit higher. And that really worked because I would love always to hike up to, viewpoints and overlooks and things like that. But now the whole world is available as an overlook for me. And I think we've already talked about that I make still images. I'm not a videographer at all. I've never on purpose set my drone or a camera to take videos. I've done it by accident, but not on purpose. So in the early days of drones, and I first got my first drone in 2018. I had seen drones before that. I was interested in them, but they seemed to have too many drawbacks, and I knew the image quality wasn't what I needed to have to make my standard print would be a 16 by 21 print, and it has to be sharp and it has to meet my standards. And I could tell it was not going to do that until the Mavic 2 Pro came out in 2018, and that was my first drone. But I was never interested in making videos. And one of the nice things for me from 2018, and it's been diminishing, of course, ever since, was that I was one of the very few people that were making still images just using the camera like a camera and not making videos. So I had that particular little niche, not totally to myself, but I had it sort of to myself for a long time. And of course, now many, many more people are making still images, but that's what I do. So as far as what drones are recommended and why, I think I'll get into that a little bit later, especially with one image that I'll talk about drones then. The difficulty of using a drone and the learning curve, well, everybody's going to find that a little bit differently, but I did not find it hard at all. And so I just went out in the lawn and practiced flying, forgetting about photography the moment, just learning how this thing worked. And I did not find it very difficult at all. So I cannot, answer for anybody else, but that's, excuse me, that was my experience. So here's an image that shows the altitude that I like to photograph, not all the time, but sometimes. Like 2 weeks ago, I was down in the Louisiana, Texas Bayou country, and I was out in these places by a boat, but I also, on some nice days, I flew my drone and I found it to be a wonderful, wonderful place to fly drones. And so this was one where we were off the water, but I could tell that the clouds were going to get good. And so I flew my drone out over a small lake and then started to get down closer and closer to the water just to see what composition that I was going to be happiest with. And in this particular case, I'm always thinking of where the horizon is and should my subject cut that horizon. And of course, the lower you go, the more the subject, like these trees, these cypress trees, the more they are going to cut that horizon and the more they're going to stand out against the sky. So if you always are 100 feet up, you're never going to see anything like this. My drone scolds me often when I'm getting too low. The worst thing that I ever had happen was I was out over an ice floe in Door County, and all of a sudden my drone announced that it was landing because I was that low. Well, I quickly went up because I did not want it to land out there. But anyway, this is an example of a typical composition that I'm looking for. It is not super different than what I would use my mirrorless camera to get. But here I'm over water and I have the ability to go up, down, sideways with ease. Here's Door County, and I was flying really to look at fall colors. I didn't realize that the storm was coming in until I got up in the air and then started to look around. And all of a sudden I saw what was happening. This was late in the evening. And so I started to work. And there's so many things that become so interesting that you can't predict. Like, I did not know that the bottom of Europe Lake on the left was going to have these really interesting bottom colors and textures until I got up there and looked. And so there's always an element of surprise, and you can't begin to predict what you're going to see. So what do you need? Well, yeah, you need a drone. That's the first thing you need. Then you have to register your drone with the FAA. The asterisk is there because if your drone is 250 grams or less, you don't have to register it. Well, that's a big important thing for some people. And when I talk about drones, there is one drone out right now that you don't have to register. You can just go out and fly it because it's 249 grams. And so DJI has very carefully looked at the rules and figured out how they could make that drone really, really light. So if used commercially, you have to pass an FAA test and receive this Part 107 license or a certificate. Since I make prints and sell those prints, I considered that that is a commercial use. And so one of the very first things that I did was to study for this particular test and then pass it. And the nice thing is once you do that, you have to renew it every 3 years, but the renewal process is so simple now, you just have to go online and renew it with like a open book test or something like that. It took about 10 minutes to renew it the last time I had to do that. So here's a photograph from Kangaroo Lake here in Door County. You'll see a lot of Door County images because that's where I live. And this could easily be taken, and I know a lot of you have been to Door County and you know this lake, and there's a causeway that drives or goes across Kangaroo Lake, and you could stand on the causeway and take this exact photograph standing there on a tripod, as long as you had maybe a little longer lens than is on my drone. My drone has an equivalent 24 millimeter lens. And so it's a wide-ish angle lens. So if you stood on the causeway and put maybe a 50 or a 35 millimeter lens on your camera, you could take this exact photograph. So I'm only about 3.5, 4 feet above the water here. I'm probably around 20 feet from the causeway. So I'm not, going to bother cars or anything like that. And the reason that I'm here is that I was starting to work out in the middle of the lake in those grasses, and then just kept flying closer and closer, staying close to those trees just to see what would happen, just to see what I could see. And I ended up getting to this point, turning around and look at where I'd come from. And I thought, oh, I like the sky. I like everything about it. And so made this particular composition. Now, I have to say that none of these images that I'm showing you is they're all raw files. None of them are without a lot of work in Lightroom, Gigapixel, Photoshop, et cetera, so this does not come out of the camera, just as anybody's camera that is watching this that doesn't have a drone. Your images don't look on print like they came out of your camera. You have to edit them, you have to work on them. And of course, working in Photoshop and Lightroom is something that I thoroughly enjoy. So it kind of is a win-win for me. All right, let's talk about the pros and cons of this a little bit. So the real thing was to extend my capabilities as a photographer and reach. I'm getting older, and the hikes that I could do with ease 20 years ago, I can't do as easily anymore. But sometimes I can do them even easier right now, sitting in my car and sending my drone out to see what I could see if I put through the effort to and go and hike there. So, well, we could talk about the drone capabilities there. Oh, I will right now, otherwise I'll forget about it. So drone capabilities are increasing all the time. RTH means return to home. Everybody that doesn't fly a drone worries about, all right, what if it gets lost? What happens if this happens? And what all modern drones have now are obstacle avoidance, which means they automatically, if you try to fly them into a tree, they don't want to do that. And so they'll either go up and over it, around it, or just stop. And so it's very hard you can still crash them, but it's harder and harder to do that all the time. Return to home means that if for some reason that you lose connection with your drone, it's gone off of your screen, phone, whatever you're looking at your image on, it's gone. Your drone has disappeared off of your screen. And all of my drones, if they're without connection to my controller for 30 seconds, they automatically go into go home mode automatically, and they climb a little bit and they come back to where they started from. The only problem, of course, is if you're flying from a boat, that can be an issue, because if your boat is moving and you lose connection and it goes home, well, it went right back to where you launched it from the boat, but you and the boat aren't there anymore. And so have had several friends lose drones that way. But otherwise, the safety aspects and the return to home aspects and the obstacle avoidance are really first rate right now. Those things I take for granted. That's what you buy a drone, a modern drone for. The big thing for me was my compositional potential went from 2 to 3 dimensions. If I'm on the ground, I can go right, left, I can walk back and forth, I can put a lens on and go into the scene a little deeper. But with a drone, I can still do all that stuff, but now I can have a vertical aspect to those dimensions too. And of course, that's the whole point of a drone. Familiar things look totally fresh and different when you see them from the air. Totally different. And I love abstract images. And so now I have a whole new way to make abstract images, and I'll show you a few of those too. Now, the cons of drone photography are the regulations and the rules. That's one. Restrictions on where you can use a drone. You cannot launch a drone and fly from a state or national park. There are other places that will have signs, no drones. And if you've got any ethics, you will respect those things. Saying one thing about state and national parks, What the rules say is that you can't fly from a state or national park. That you are fully legal to fly over a state park or national park if you don't launch from the park grounds. And a few years ago up in Munising, the national Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, there was a boat flying a drone, and it caught a once in a century rock crash. A whole piece of Pictured Rocks peeled off and fell into Lake Michigan, or Lake Superior, I should say. And the park superintendent desperately wanted that particular footage to put in his visitor center, which is there today. And of course, you know, he knew that you can't fly from a national park, but then he researched it and came up with his method of being able to use this footage because it had not taken off from that national park. It had flown over it and near it. So that kind of set the rule for that into stone. Now, another thing, where you live can make a really big difference in terms of whether it's nice and convenient to fly your drone or just a big pain to do it. People that live in cities, suburbs, things like that, have a much harder time to use their drone than I do. I'm going to show you, and I'll remember to say this in quite a few images that I'm going to show you, that Door County, first of all, is a wonderful place to fly from. And when I see something, I live with trees all around me. It's a farm, but I have open land, but I still have trees, so I can never see the true sunset. If I see something happening in the sky, I just launch my drone from my driveway and go straight up. And many of the images that I have are just from something like that. Yeah, you can get potential antagonism from people watching you drone, things like that. I have never, ever had that particular issue, mainly because I'm a very private drone flyer. I have never flown with other people. I don't like flying around people. I don't like taking off where people can see me. I'm usually, my favorite place to take off from is I set the drone on the roof of my car and go and sit in my car and take off and go from there. So I'm not outside at all. I'm just flying from my driver's seat. And so I'm reasonably stealthy when it comes to that point. So I'm not really bugging anybody. I'm certainly not flying near people, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Learning by trial and error what subject works and what doesn't. Everybody has to go through that and do, things that you have to do for your own sensibilities and what you're interested in. So here's,
we
yes.
got one request that if you know what the elevations would be for your photos, if you can give us.
I'll get to rules and
hint.
regulations about that. But
Okay.
since you asked right now, is that on my controller, I can see two things, and I have to look at those three things that I look at all the time. The first thing is I look at how many more minutes flying time I have, what percentage of battery is left. Those are very critical because, the drone, if it knows it's far enough away, so it's got enough battery to get home, but not much more, it will ignore me and just come home because it doesn't want to be left out in the lake. So that's one of the things that a drone has. But as far as altitude, on my controller, I can see exactly how far up I am. And that's important because we'll get to that rule in just a little bit. Having said that, it's not a real critical thing that I'm thinking about all the time. So I kind of keep going up and up and up until it looks right. And then I look down and say, ooh, I'm a little over 400 feet. So I have to either take that picture quick and get out of there, like go down, or just go down and not do it. Having said that, there are some images that I think you could easily see I'm way over 400 feet, but I have a wide angle snap-on lens that I can put in front of that camera. And so it's an even wider angle lens. And so I can go up to 400 feet, look down, and it looks like I'm like 800 or 1,000 feet high. So that's a very handy little lens that was developed, and I quickly bought it. The other thing that is on my controller is at how far away I am. It's in yards. So it's in feet. I'm sorry. So I can see exactly I'm 500 feet away and at 300 feet up. So I have that capability of knowing where I am. But I'm really looking at my screen on my controller to see this. I mean, I'm composing, I'm controlling the drone, I'm moving it slightly different from right to left, up and down until things just are right, and then I can take the picture. This is a good example of what I see right from my driveway, because I had been out photographing with my mirrorless and my drone, and the cloud bank came over the sun, and I could see the light was gone in the afternoon. And so I was driving home. I drove into my driveway, was pulling into my garage, and all of a sudden the trees around the driveway lit up with this late sun. So I said, well, now this is interesting. So immediately I just jumped out of my car, put my drone up, and this is what was waiting for me. And I was at a fresh battery. So I sat above my house. I'm going to guess this is about 300 feet up. I'm just guessing, because I don't remember. And I sat there for the full 35 minutes of flying time that I have. If I look at how far away from my launch point I am, I'm within 10 feet of where I launched, but I'm, 300 feet up. And I watched the sun go from above that cloud where you can see it, down into that hole where there's bright sun shining through. And then all of a sudden, all these God rays started to appear. And so this is actually two, I maybe shot 30 exposures sitting there. And when I say sitting there, my drone parks. If I don't monkey with the controls to move it, and there's no wind or not much wind, and like this afternoon was nothing. It's just sitting up there parked. I can take up to the longest exposure I've successfully made was 4 seconds, when it was totally sharp and things like that. So that's how stable, if the weather conditions are right, that my drone can be. So early in the time that I'm spending here, which was about a half hour, the trees were lit up when the sun was above the clouds. Well, they looked really good then. Now, when the sun is behind the cloud, the God rays look really good. And I've got both of those images, and they are both perfectly alignable. And so that's something that I did on this one. I had the sky and the God rays shot from about a 10-minute later exposure. Still haven't moved my drone than the foreground shot. So, people do that with their still cameras all the time. And, so that's what I can do with my drone also. All right, rules and break. Yeah. Go ahead.
Before you start on that, Dan, we got a couple more questions here.
Okay.
Dick Weibolt was asking, how noisy are the drones these days, and do they scare the wildlife?
I'm not a wildlife photographer,
Yeah.
so I don't know if they scare the wildlife, but they are reasonably quiet. The two drones that I'm using right now are the Mavic 3, and that is a reasonably quiet drone. And then I bought, and I'll explain that in a little bit, I bought a new Mini 3 Pro that just came out a couple, 3 months ago now. And that is extremely quiet. If you get some of the other ones like the, like the Avata, that is a screamer, but it's known, you're supposed to fly it real fast and through things and things like that. So I'm not interested in that. It's a performance drone, not a photo drone. And that one is noisy as can be. My two are reasonably quiet. And the minute that you're, 50 feet up and go, a few hundred feet, nobody's listening to them anymore. But wildlife, I can't speak to. I have been in Iceland where birds were way too interested in my drone for my comfort. And I could see them flashing by I could see them on my screen, just flashing in front of me. And I took it to mean, oh, get out of here. So I was very happy to get out of there because I have some other friends that have lost drones where birds have attacked the drone, and that was it for the drone. They were over water and that was it. So I don't know that things are afraid of drones. I've never really put that to the test. I'm not a wildlife photographer, so I don't know. All right, so here are the rules and regulations. They're always in a state of change. You're supposed to fly never more than 400 feet above the takeoff point. That's you could be on a mountain top, you're 20,000 feet up, and you can still go 400 feet above that. And so you can be very, very high, but you're never supposed to be more than 400 feet above your takeoff point. You're always supposed to keep your drone within sight, physically in sight. Well, I, of course, would never break rules, but I don't know how to do that because I'm looking at what my screen is. And when I show you some other images, that I'll tell you, that I'm 3 miles away. Well, just assume that I have extremely good eyesight and I can see my drone 3 miles away. All right, so that's the one rule that I sort of roll my eyes at. But of course, I'm never going to admit that I don't follow it. All right, so never fly over groups of people, 5 miles away from all airports. All these things make total sense. And I am very careful to make sure that I am careful to observe these rules. Never fly over stadiums or sporting events. You never want to be that guy or that woman that is going to be on television for, being arrested, doing something really stupid like that. Never fly near emergency response efforts like forest fires, things like that. Never fly drunk. You're not supposed to do that. And then you have to be aware of FAA airspace requirements. So those are the rules and the regulations, none of which are onerous, none of which get in the way of common sense aerial photography. All right, so this is a morning shot. I'm laying in my bed and I look out the window at just before sunrise or at sunrise, and I see fog. And so I am quickly out of bed, launching from my driveway again, going up and making images like this. And then in some instances, I'm back in bed in 15 minutes. But that's the advantage of living someplace where you can fly a drone right from where you're living. This is just maybe a month ago, just before the fall's colors hit here in Door County, I saw this. And so again, I was up photographing. And when I say up photographing, I'm up there for probably 30 minutes and I'm taking many different compositions. This is something that I do not do if I am using my 4/3 camera. Then my number of compositions goes way down because I have to move between each one, change lenses, etc. With a drone, I can go 400 or 500 yards, in just a few seconds, and so I'm good to go, and I can make many different compositions. Like in this one, that tree that is in front of the sunlit fog, I would go lower and higher to see where I wanted that tree to be. Did I want to put the tree very close to the back edge, or did I want even more of the sunny fog to be in the frame? So, just by going closer and higher or lower, I could do all those things. All right, let's try talking about drone etiquette a little bit. I have never really had to do this because, as I said, I never fly where I'm having to make or ask for permission, because I'm really never flying around people. I always avoid crowds. Like in Sister Bay, we have Fall Festival, which is a huge number of people. And whenever I'm there, the last few years, I'm always seeing drones, that are floating maybe 25 feet above the crowd. And I just scratch my head at whoever is controlling that drone. They are not, as far as I'm concerned, having good drone etiquette habits. These are obvious things. You don't ever fly near disaster zones, airports, heliports. Be nice, just be approachable. If people are interested in what you're doing, just answer their questions. I remember I was in Norway before I bought my first drone, and I was at a guy at a really nice seaside place, making my photographs with my tripod, and a guy came down there and started to fly a drone, and I quickly lost interest in what I was doing. I just went over and started asking questions, and he was very nice. Showed me what he was doing. You know, I could see these mountains that were a mile away. He was out there photographing and making compositions that I couldn't even think about. So when I saw that, I was pretty sure that there would be a drone in my future sometime. Don't be disruptive. Don't be the guy that, you know, somebody's going to look at and say, you know, what a jerk for flying like that. I remember I was in the Faroe Islands at a waterfall, and there was a picnic table right maybe 10 feet from the road and another 10 feet from where the rest of us were looking at the waterfall. And here comes a big family, sat down at that picnic table, about 9 of them, got their food out, launched a drone and parked it about 5 feet away from the end of their table between them and the road, and they were just filming themselves have a picnic. So that doesn't fly for my drone etiquette at all. Use common sense. That's the big thing, because to me, common sense was not doing what this family was doing, just filming themselves in front of everybody with a noisy drone sitting 6 feet above the ground, parked there in the air, bothering everybody. All right. The type of compositions you can do with any camera that you are thinking of. The 3 type of compositions that I'm thinking of are the long view, which any high vantage point, an overlook will give you. Looking down at an angle, I can do that from any high vantage point, and then straight down. That's a great viewpoint, but there you can only do it, you know, from the ground, and you can make small, little, intimate shots of abstract compositions. But with a drone, you can do those same abstract compositions from a lot higher up. So to me, it is just another camera. I have to put all of the files through Lightroom and Photoshop. I edit them just as carefully, just as extensively as I do with any of my DSLRs or mirrorless or anything like that. My method of finding compositions is different because as I said before, I shoot a lot more compositions or a lot more exposures with my drone than I do when I'm on the ground with my other cameras. Drone limitations for me now, because I'm a printer and my main use of these drone files is making a print. And my standard print size would be a 16 by 21 print. And I can go up, I can print in my studio here up to 24 by whatever. But typically it would be 24 by 30. So those limitations of a drone file have to be such that I can make those size prints and be satisfied and happy myself with the resolution, sharpness, et cetera, et cetera. So the sensor size of a drone is much, much smaller. My Mavic 3 has a micro 4/3 sensor, and it's fully capable of making tremendous prints. I talked a little bit before about that I use Topaz Products Gigapixel to take those files and bring them up to 16 by 21 size in gigapixel. And if I need any little bit of sharpening, I'll use it in Topaz also. If I have denoise, although these files are remarkably noiseless, so I don't have to do that too much. And best practices with my camera, I don't have to worry too much about that because depth of field is virtually unlimited because it's a small sensor. You're far away from your subject. There's nothing, you don't have any really near-far problems as far as depth of field. So I can shoot wide open with my camera at 2.8. I can with my Mavic 3 stop down all the way to 11. I have never, ever stopped down past f4 or f4.5. That's it. because I don't need to. Now, my little Mini 3 Pro, that has a wide open aperture, a fixed aperture of f1.8. And I thought, ooh, that's going to be a real problem. It's not. I have plenty of shutter speed and other controls. So I have no issues with that one either. So that's what I kind of mean by best practices. I want things to be sharp, high resolution, and I can do that to my standards. Now, getting to compositions, this is the bayou, the Cypress Swamp Bayou area that I was at a couple weeks ago. And while I used my Micro Four Thirds camera, my Canon R5, way more than my drone, I did use my drone a fair amount. But when I'm over this particular lake, and you can see, there's bayous here and there. So I'm just looking over this and I say, all right, what am I most interested in? And I made this particular composition, but then I decided that I would concentrate on that little island that is on the lower left third. And so I went down and made this particular composition of that. And this is something that I never could do from a boat, which was my other mode of transportation when I was photographing in this country a couple of weeks ago. So this is where my drone is really, really very helpful. And here's something I'm not quite looking straight down, but I'm looking at a bayou that we had just gone in this little boat. And of course, from the boat, all I can do is see trees. I can't see the forest. But later on in the afternoon, when we were finished going around these areas with a boat, I remembered this little alcove filled with this. The green looks kind of pretty here, but it's deadly. It is an invasive species that is taking over these lakes, and it is not nice. Hard to get a boat through. They're trying to control it as best they can, but I'm afraid they are in a losing battle. But anyway, I would consider this a quasi-abstract. It's not looking quite straight down, but you get the idea of what I'm talking about when I say that. Now, in Door County, Pilot Island is an island that I've wanted to make evening photographs for a long time. And I would try to get friends of mine to take me out at sunset in a boat. It never worked out. But once I got my drone, I'm looking out there and I'm thinking, all right, I've got to fly out there if I have the guts to do that, because it's like 2 miles out, but I can see it, and I can sit on the shore and I can see exactly. My drone is never out of line of sight, and of course, with my wonderful eyes, I can see it all the way out there. Of course, so I'm flying out there. That was with my Mavic 2 Pro, which was my first drone. I was waiting. This was on a late April or early March evening, and there was not a breath of wind in Door County that day. And I could see the skies were going to be really probably very good in terms of as the sunset started to light them up. So I flew out there. I have 3 batteries. It took me 10 minutes to get out there. And I had maybe 10 minutes of working time around those islands. And then I had to make sure that I had 10 minutes of flying time to get back to shore, pop another battery in, went out, did the same thing, used up all 3 of my batteries. And this was probably from the middle flight. And this is from my last flight. And it's probably the last image that I took. My controller was telling me that if I didn't come home on my own, it was just going to come home by itself, because the battery had enough life to get back with ease, but not much more. Pilot Island was interesting to me because cormorants have killed it. Every one of these trees should be alive. And when I had this image on my screen, I lightened it up a lot and made it very, very large, and just started counting the cormorants that I could see on this. None of them are perched in trees. They're all on the ground. You can see white birds. Those are a few seagulls. I stopped counting at 240 cormorants that I could clearly count in this particular image. Now, you can't see that at all, but all the dark colored, the really real dark colored areas around the buildings there, that's all cormorants crowded together. And of course, they kill all the vegetation there. that's hardly the focus of our talk here, but that's something, you know, that bothered me. But anyway, my drone allowed me to get out there and take these images. The previous one was taken only about 4 feet off of the lake surface. And this one was maybe, oh, I don't know, maybe 15 feet, 20 feet higher or high. Well, you can tell exactly how high this is because you can see the lighthouse steeple there. The top of the lighthouse is right at the horizon line. So and I'm far enough away so that how high that building is, that's how high I am over the water. Another shot of northern Door County. This is a great place to fly, and anytime I see interesting things happening in the atmosphere, I'm off flying. This was in the morning, and I really wanted to see the colors. What we're looking at here is Europe Lake in the foreground, Lake Michigan in the background, and the rest of Door County, you know, going off into the right distance there. But I'm looking down at the left of Europe Bay State Park, or Newport State Park, I'm sorry, Newport State Park. But I'm not taking off from there, but I am certainly, and I'm not even over it here, but I certainly can get over it and do every once in a while, but I'm never taking off or landing in there. Cherry blossom season is something that I'm always looking with all my cameras, you know, still cameras and my drone cameras. And so I'm looking carefully here, and I saw that there was a storm that was predicted. This is late May, and a storm was predicted. So I launched and started to fly over various orchards. I flew over this orchard much earlier, and then on my way home, I was driving past and I saw that the storm with the clouds were really lighting up nicely. So I pulled over and again photographed what I had done maybe like an hour before, which turned out never to be used because the light wasn't as good. But this particular one was really, really nice. Now, here's something, you haven't seen too many vertical shots. The only way that I can make a vertical image from my Mavic 3 or my Mavic 2 Pro was to either stack 3 horizontal images. In other words, aim down at the orchard, take that shot, tip my camera up a little bit, take the middle shot, and then go up and take the sky, and then merge those together and make a vertical. The only other way is to take a horizontal image and then crop it to vertical. And I honestly don't remember which one I did here. If you want to have big prints, and I do, then the one that is safest will be to take those 3 shots and then merge them as a vertical panorama in Photoshop or Lightroom. Here we're looking pretty much at the entire county going southeast of us. So we can see Lake Michigan on the left, Europe Lake on the right, and then Green Bay in the far right there. So I'm really up in the morning making photographs of the color. This is a couple years ago when we had a really, really great fall season in terms of color. And the weather forecast was for rain all day. And it was, you know, I wasn't happy about losing a whole day of photographing up here, but I woke up and I saw some glints of sun out. And so I quickly got up and drove over to my favorite launch place where I can see Newport State Park, which we're looking at almost the whole left side here to where the water really comes in. That's all Newport State Park. So you can see virtually the entire state park here. But again, I'm not launching from there or landing from there. But what was so interesting was that the clouds were very cool. I like them, but I've got a polarizing filter on my lens, and the floor of Lake Michigan, it was calm enough. And with my polarizing lens, I was able to see these incredibly cool shapes and textures that were on the bottom of the lake. You of course can't see anything like that, you know, from the ground. but from the air you can. And so that was the impetus and the reason for this particular image. I started to see them when I was over the park itself, but then I could see if I got out over the lake and looked back a little bit, I was going to be able to really make those like the star of the show. And that's the composition that I'm ending up with here. Now here's a straight down shot of our zigzag road here in Northern Door County. And I saw these two driveways going off it. So this is an example of a straight down shot with a drone. Any drone can do this. Another interesting thing is if I see a storm, I usually pop my drone up to see what I can see. And there's also on the lower right, there's 11 pelicans flying down there. And if I blow this up a lot, you can actually see that they are pelicans. So the resolution is really nice. But really, you know, I'm here, and this is with that wide angle attachment that I can put on my camera. So I can get the entire storm cloud in and, you know, get the rainbows here also. Typical Door County fall scene where I'm looking at textures, I'm looking at lines, I'm looking at the textures and lines where the corn planter has gone through and planted the corn. You don't see this from the ground, but from the air, you see things like this, where these lines and textures can make a very important part of the composition. Now, this is the one I was going to talk about, the drones, because my first drone was a Mavic 2 Pro. I don't have that one anymore because when the Mavic 3 came out, I bought that one. And I had a controller for it. And then the Mini 3 Pro came out. And I thought, boy, that would be a really handy little thing because it is just so lightweight that you could put it in your pocket if you wanted to with a jacket. So I wanted that drone if I was going to go on a place, you know, where it was going to be hard for me to carry 2 camera bags and things like that. And within a month after it came out, the firmware update said that I could fly that one on my controller. And so I bought it. And if you buy the Mini 3 Pro just by itself, it's like $600. So it's not a very expensive drone. Unless you have to, you know, buy a controller and things like that. But it's a marvelous, marvelous drone for a first-time drone user because it falls at 249 grams. You don't have to register it. You can learn on it. You can take photographs. This is from that Mini 3 Pro, this photograph. I really went up there in the morning just to kind of get more used to it, things like that. And then, of course, I saw the sunrise coming up and I saw the fog. Again, this is right from above my driveway, you know, within 500 feet of it. I saw this happening. And so I had to kind of get to work seriously. And so this is from a Mini 3 Pro. If I would have known that it was going to be this good, probably would have put up my Mavic 3. But I always talk about this just because this proved to me that the Mini 3 Pro can make really great images. And I have a 16:21 print of this that I would put up with my R5, I would put up with my Mavic 3. It's just a fine, resolute photograph. Oh, another thing that the Mini 3 Pro has, and I don't know why all drones don't have this, is that you can change the camera from horizontal to vertical just with a flip. And that especially, you know, this one has a smaller sensor than my Mavic 3. So if I want a vertical, that's a very, very handy thing to do. Here's another shot that when I saw the storm approaching, I decided, all right, let's pop up above the house and see if this storm is going to be photogenic or not. Many times I'll put my drone up and it's not photogenic. Sometimes it's like this, where it's extremely photogenic. And so I'm always interested in doing something like that. This is a lazy drone shot. This is an abandoned farm that is up here in Door County. I'm driving by, I've got both cameras with me, and I could have walked the 1/4 mile, but it was still drizzling a little bit. And the grass was at least this long and longer on my walk over to there. and it was soaking wet. And I didn't feel like getting wet. So I just put my drone up and flew over there and got down as low as I could in terms of the composition that I would have made with my R5 and made this. So as I said, you know, I'm not particularly proud of that, but I didn't feel like getting wet and could do it with my drone and had it with me. So I did. And of course, it saved a lot of time of hiking too. The quality of light is so important. I feel, I can't prove this, but I feel that the quality of light, time of day, et cetera, is more important in drone photography than it is in still photography. That doesn't, when I say that, you know, I don't quite believe it, but it seems true to me. The shots that I take with my drone are usually when the quality of light is really, really good. That's the key. Those are the keepers. Like this. This is Shiprock out in New Mexico. I had planned this particular photograph since the first time I thought about having a drone. I wanted to be there for sunrise and see the sun come up on the fins and the Shiprock itself right at sunrise. I tried 2 years in a row. The previous year to this one, I was there to do this. The winds never dropped below 40 miles an hour, and I never could launch. And the weather was just terrible, so I never had the chance. The next year, I did look at the weather when I was up in Utah, and I could see that I was going to have about a 2 or 3 day window where it was going to be really good weather down in northern New Mexico. And so I just drove down there to get this composition and a couple others from Shiprock. So I'm putting my drone in the air before the sun came up, figured out exactly what composition I wanted, and then parked my drone and just waited for the sun to break the horizon and to start lighting up those walls and Shiprock. And I kept shooting. You know, as soon as I got the first glimmer of sun on Shiprock, I was starting to make exposures. And this is the one that to me showed what I wanted and felt in my mind planning this. It showed that the best. So this is the composition that everybody sees. Nobody else sees the other 30 that I took, you know, before and after this, but primarily from this same composition. So then I went back that evening and took this shot. So this is at sunset. And again, I found this one, I probably took more compositions. I flew a lot lower down than this, where I could make a composition of really highlighting and making a star of the wall itself. And then Shiprock was kind of between those fins. But this one, you know, this is the one that I had in my mind previously. So this is the last rays of sun hitting Shiprock. And of course, a drone is the only, you can't even do this in an airplane because you'd have to be there at just the right time. With my drone, I'm just parked here and I just can watch the light for about the full 35 minutes of battery life that I have and can just pick my time and pick my place as far as getting the quality of light the best. Door County and this place are my favorite places to fly. This is the Badlands in Utah. I went out on this particular road, and the colors and the textures and everything are really why I'm here. Things like this. By the way, I found this area on Google Earth and went into Google Earth a little bit more, and I saw, oh, there's a track there, there's a road. So I had to drive down a dry riverbed, maybe about 10 miles, and then find that road, climb up out and went there. I spent 3 days there. It's clay-based road, so you have to be very, very careful not to be there when it's wet, because you'll get out there and you won't come back because your truck will be bogged down to the axles in clay grease. Anyway, this is what I'm there for. Now, I'm camped here. You can see the road on the left there, on the left edge. This was with a still camera in the afternoon. The only non-drone shot that I'm going to show you, but I can see Factory Butte. I can see the Badlands. I can see all the colors and everything here. The day was not good. This was in the afternoon. The sky was milky, just wasn't nice to photograph. But I took this record shot because the next morning I wanted to be 50 feet or 40 feet above this. So again, I'm up the next morning, I've got my drone up, and this is what it looked like the next morning from a little bit higher, no more than 40 or 50 feet above the ground. And of course, you know, I had this wonderful morning storm sitting out over Factory Butte and over Capitol Reef. The storm is quite a ways away. It was over Capitol Reef, and it never got to me. And I could see by the weather the night before that it wasn't going to get to me, but I was hoping that I'd get something in the morning, and I was very, very happy to see this all come together. So it was a bit of planning. I could see the storm or clouds were supposed to be kind of cool in the morning, and this is what I got. This is Factory Butte again. I love this particular area. This was late in the afternoon. Well, it was actually just after or at sunset. And I was looking at something else. I'm camped down below this. And I decided, then I saw the sky start to light up. So I popped my drone up above the mesas there and was very happy to see what was in front of me. And so I made this particular photograph. I was really there, this is the day before now, to photograph this particular spire. I had known about this spire and I've seen it from a distance for a long time. But I went there, I thought this would be a morning shot. And so I'm there in the morning to scout it out, and then came back in the afternoon. I was going to camp there that night, but I just put my drone up for the last few rays of sun, and I realized, oh, this is an afternoon shot. And so this is with 3 vertical stacked, and it's a vertical stacked shot. So this is the first time I was able to photograph that spire. I've been there many times, but this next one is this last April. This is almost a little selfie because I don't know if you can see to the right as we're looking at the screen, to the right of the spire, way in the distance, you see a little white speck. Well, that's me sitting in my Yukon, and I'm sitting there making this particular photograph with my Mavic 3. All these textures and formations around the cane mesas are things that I really, really like. I love spires. I found this particular spire in midday, but the sun was on it. There was a hard cutting shadow. Didn't like that at all. So I just went away, remembered where it was. And after the sun had gone behind the mountains, then I flew back and got this with soft light. Another shot of one of those mesas in the Badlands there with the Henry Mountains in the distance. I've photographed this particular area for maybe, I don't know, 40 years, but only the last, well, since 2018 is when I first flew drones and photographed over here. And I've not missed a year since flying over that. This is another drone shot from that particular area looking straight down and making more of a black and white abstract from it. This is last April, and I'm flying down, along the mesas, looking at the floor, looking at my controller, looking straight down, and all of a sudden this appeared. I had never seen it before, but I've looked at it, you know, from the mesa top, because I'm parked right here. But when I saw this bird, you know, form in the sandstone or in the clay, I quickly started to get to work and made some compositions of that. Door County again, I wanted to put that sun right where it is. So I'm flying, the boat is going from right to left, and I am slowly flying from alongside it, keeping the sun and the boat together, and finally made this particular composition. Door County again this fall. Same thing with this one. This is Three Springs as it's coming into North Bay. I just love the textures. I like the way the little creek is moving. It's very hard to walk to this spot because, you know, it's wet. Same thing with this. I'm flying back to where I took off from, and I found this lone tree, dead as far as I could tell, and made this particular composition. So something that I didn't expect, but it was there. High up over Door County again, this is the Zigzag Road on a nice foggy day. and it was in midweek and maybe a little drizzle. So there was no cars in the road, but I could sit up there and wait for no cars. So things like this, work very well. The North Pier Headlight in Sturgeon Bay, I wanted to get a sunrise shot here. So again, I was down there, was waiting in the air for the sun to come up. I could see where it was going to come up. And I put the lighthouse exactly where I wanted it in the frame and then just waited. And as soon as the sun just broke the horizon and looked like it was sitting on the sun, that's when I made this composition, one of many that I took, but this is the one that was the keeper for me. This was really fun. This was last winter. And in the winter, we get ice forms. I see I'm running a little late. Do you want to cut this off, or can I?
No, you can keep going, Dan.
All right. So
We're fine.
I can 10 more minutes and I'll be finished for sure. But otherwise we can
No
cut off
problem.
anytime. Anyway, we had a very poor ice year here in Durant County this last winter. And I was feeling quite sorry for myself until I was driving through Sister Bay late February. And all of a sudden, on the other side of the Sister Islands, which are about 3 miles away from Sister Bay, I could see this big ice shove behind them, and it was taller than the trees on that island. So that was exciting to me. And so I went home, waited until it was getting near dusk, and flew out there and saw this magnificent ice shove waiting for me. Now, the next shot is, well, I'll put that one on right now. You can see that the ice has broken up around it, but that flow sat there. And I was out there in the next 10 days before it finally broke up and was gone. I was out there probably 7 afternoons. And every time I was out there, I would use up 3 batteries. And then finally, this is, you can see why you can't get to it, because there's open water around it. I am sitting safely on shore back, on the bluff there in my car someplace. And this is after the sun had set. I turned around to come back to my launch point, and I saw this. And of course, this is well after the sun has gone down, but the textures and everything were just wonderful. And so I made this shot quickly. My drone was telling me that I'm going home. And so I stopped the automatic going home function and got this shot and one more, and then came home manually. But it was something that I don't think anybody else in Door County or any other photographer was able to get, because I know a few drone photographers up here, and I know none of them were out there, but I saw it and was out there for a long time. This is from an ice shove several years before that, but it was something that I really liked. I love that spire, that shove that was just stood on end. And so probably I'm no more than 2 feet above the ice at this point. And my drone is scolding me because it does not like to be that low. This is the one that said that was going to land. And then, but I'd already taken this. So as soon as I heard landing, I was up out of there right away. Abstract shots of Garrett Bay, maybe a mile from my house. Abstract shots of a cherry orchard with late light sun streaming down. And then this particular one, this is another orchard between, well, just south of Ellison Bay. When the trees were small, I was taking drone shots in the afternoon, looking at cherry trees, flew a little bit south and was looking, oh, the road cuts right through there. So I'm over the road and making this particular composition. And you can see how carefully I can make, I did not do any manipulation in Photoshop in terms of lining edges up or anything like that. I can park my drone and make little mini changes and get this. I can see the road right in front of me because I'm sitting in my car. And I saw this black pickup truck, didn't think of anything about it, go by me from right to left. And then I went back to my screen and I saw the pickup go through the scene. And I'm thinking, oh, a car in there might be nice. And as soon as I'm thinking of that, I saw this red SUV go past me, and now I'm very interested. And so I'm waiting with my thumb on the exposure button. And as soon as I saw that red car come from the bottom, I took 3 shots as quick as I can. This was the third one, and he was in just a perfect position. But I've got him 2 other places, as he's driving. He's doing about 45 or 50 miles an hour. And if I enlarge this really a lot, I can see that car is just a little bit soft, but it works well in a nice big print that I have in my wall in my studio. We've talked about this before. My compositional thoughts on Cana Island. First of all, this is in early December. No snow yet in the county, and there's nobody else here. No other cars in the parking lot. I've driven in here to photograph with my drone Cana Island, seen too many cars and just left because I don't feel like flying around people. I was all alone here, and the sky was starting to turn nice things. The sun was going down. And so I'm going lower because I want the lighthouse to break the skyline, to break the horizon. But if I go any lower than that evergreen tree starts to hide the house. And so this is the happy medium where I thought the composition is just exactly where I want it. This is in Spain this last spring. Very difficult to hike down to the shore in northern Spain. And that's where, to me, that's where the goodies were. And so instead, I was there a week before my photo group, and I flew my drone here, and we were never able to find a way down to this spot. But I love this shot and what a drone can reveal. Same thing there, same thing here. This is northern Spain. I could walk out here at low tide, but I'd have to crawl down a very steep quasi cliff, and I can't do that anymore. And so I just flew out there in an evening. This was not at low tide, it was at high tide, but I could still make the shot that I wanted. Here we're in Greenland. I did not fly off of the boat because I had a friend that lost his drone flying off the boat, and I wanted to fly in Iceland later on. This is Northern Ireland. I don't know if any of you know about the site in Northern Ireland called the Dark Hedges. It's a row of 300-year-old beech trees that wonderful, wonderful photographs can be made. Anyway, the Dark Hedges is that row that goes from the lower left to the middle right. That's the Dark Hedges, but my group and I had already photographed there that morning. This is right at sunset. And so I just, instead of going to an early dinner, I just put my drone up and took this particular shot. Iceland is just an incredible place to photograph. We're just a couple shots away from being done here now. This is as one of the glacial rivers comes from the right and meets the ocean on the left. And this little spit of black sand is separating the water from the right from the ocean. And I just made a whole bunch of compositions as the water would swirl around, making all sorts of really great shapes. You can see I'm not very far above the area because those white dots are shorebirds, or they're flying seagulls. And there's a couple of them that are in the air actually. So I'm not that far above. I went there with my drone because I couldn't rent an airplane. It was too expensive. So I went to fly my drone over these braided glacial rivers. And so that's what I'm showing you right here. I was just in my element doing this. So these are straight down abstract shots, and yet they are not abstract shots. This glacier is, of course, another place that I'm flying quite a ways. I'm flying all the way as far as I dared up that glacier, and then took this close-up shot. I'm only about 20 feet above the glacier, although I am probably more than 400 feet above where I took off from, but I'm only 20 feet above the glacier. Again, in Iceland, these pools, they're just hot pools, boiling water, and they have such different colors, and they are very close together. These things are only about maybe 15 feet apart. They're not that big at all. And then this particular one, well, there's a story there, but I don't have time to tell that now. But anyway, I am very low over this little pot. And the only thing I was worried about is it would spit every once in a while, and it would spit a jet of really boiling water, and it would go up about 6 feet. And I think I'm only about 4 feet above it here. So I took the shot and got out of there pretty quick. Black Sand Beach, just looking straight down at how Black Sand Beach breaks or how waves break on that shore. And I think this, now the second to last shot, these craters in Iceland, these are old volcanic craters. You can't see that they're craters from where I am in my car, but if I put my drone up just a little bit, then I can see that I'm dealing with 3 craters. And I was very, very much happy finding things like this. The Vestrahorn Mountains in eastern Iceland, I've got many still photographs and now some drone photographs of the compositions around there. The Eystrahorn is in eastern Iceland, and this is the final shot. This is a canyon whose name starts with F that I can't pronounce, so I'm not even going to try. But I flew into that canyon. When I was there a few years ago, there were signs, no drones. So I'm there a couple of years ago, or no, just this last year. And I noticed, I had not planned to fly here at all, but I noticed that they had taken down the no drone sign and put up another sign saying that drones are permissible, but here are the rules. And so I was delighted to follow any of the rules that they have, because now I could, fly my drone there. All right, I'm sorry for going over, but I haven't heard any questions to stop me. Does anybody have any questions that I've glossed over by going way too fast?
Well, we got a couple here. Okay, go ahead, Drema.
I have the Mavic 2 Pro, and I really like the wide angle lens on it. But one thing that I'm most disappointed with my drone photography is the fact that I can't get the ratio between the subject and the background, for example, the way that I want it. And so I've heard that the Mavic 3, I think, has a zoom lens, and I was wondering if you've used that or you've taken advantage of that.
You say you had a Mini 3 Pro?
No, the Mavic 2 Pro.
Oh, the Mavic 2 Pro, okay, which is a super, super drone. All right, so if I understand your question, you want to get the same near far perspective that you can with another camera and can't do it because of the fixed lens?
Right. I'd like to, for example, I'd like to get some moon shots where the moon is a little bit bigger. But if you back away from your subject, the moon gets smaller, for example. And I was wondering, with the zoom lenses on one of them, I think it's the Mavic 3.
The Mavic 3 has a zoom lens that you can go many, many times, but it has a raw capability of giving you a file that is 7 times the other camera. It's not a very high resolution camera. I'm sure that I paid a lot of money, because it's built into the Mavic 3, although the new Mavic 3 Classic has just the great 4/3 camera, and it has dropped the extended tele camera. And to me, that is a good choice, because you save a lot of money and you don't have that tele camera, which I never use because I can't make prints that are sharp enough for me using it. And it would, the idea that you're going to take a successful moon shot with a drone, to me, is a non-factor. I don't think you have a chance to do that. The only way you can do it is to take that file and enlarge the heck out of it so that the moon size is as big as you want it. And it really doesn't have enough resolution to allow that, gigapixel or no gigapixel. So I think you're just asking something that drone can't do.
Is there a drone that will, I mean, I'm not necessarily getting like those big moon shots, but I would like maybe a little bit bigger on the background for.
Yes, there are drones that are big enough. Now, these are multi-person drones. You can't use them yourself. We're talking, $20,000, $30,000, and they will be able to attach your DSLR onto them, and you can put any zoom lens you want. I don't have any idea about how much you can control that, because that is I'm not interested in that drone, so I really haven't done much investigation of it. But yes, there are drones. If you desperately want that shot bad enough, there's always a way to do it.
Thank you. Good presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Um,
Anybody else?
And we've got a couple questions here. Does the metadata show the elevation on each individual photo?
It does not. It
It
does
doesn't.
not. Right.
Wow.
That's the one thing that it does not. It does not have distance from launch point, does not have elevation, anything like that.
Okay. Does it have GPS information?
Yes, it
Okay.
does.
All right. The last question that I have here is, do you have recommendations for what drone to buy and use? That's sort of a
Well,
big area.
it is. It is. It's just like cameras. I've had 3 now. I still use 2. I don't use my Mavic 2 anymore. I've got rid of that. But they're all DJI products. And DJI is to drones like Apple is to phones and tablets and things like that. So they are by far the elephant in the room in terms of making really, really good drones. And so there is an excellent reason why they are by far the biggest seller and manufacturer of drones. And the 2 that I have, if I was going to get a Mavic 3, I would not recommend the original that I got, although you can still buy it. I would recommend the Mavic 3 Classic, which just has the great 24 megapixel equivalent, 20 megapixel, but 24 what's the word I'm looking at? The size of the lens. Well, anyway,
millimeter?
wide angle lens.
Yeah.
Millimeter.
Wide angle.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it still has that, but it's much less expensive, or it's less expensive than the original Mavic 3. The Mavic 3 Cine is really expensive, but that is built for cinematic use, and it has a 1 terabyte hard drive that is built into it. And there was no way that I'm not interested in making videos, and I was nowhere going to spend, the huge extra money to get that capability. So the one that I'd recommend is the Mavic 3 Classic. And then the new one, which is the Mini 3 Pro, is just a marvelous little drone. So light and so versatile. Beautiful in the wind. It is the quietest one of the drones that I've heard. And so for a first drone or somebody that doesn't want to, put a lot of money into it, I think you can get a controller that has a screen built in and the drone for under $1,000. And so, I don't have a still camera that is that inexpensive. So I don't consider that, for the quality and the capability, I don't consider that very expensive.
No, not too bad. Great. I don't have any other questions unless anybody else does.
I do, if I
Go
may.
ahead.
I could
Sure.
have a whole slew of questions, but I'll try to keep it down. I'm kind of interested in what you were talking about, that you said you had a wide angle attachment. And which drone was that for? And is that available for other drones?
I think it's available. I don't have it for the Mini 3 Pro, but I have it for my Mavic 3. And I don't remember who makes it. Polar Pro, maybe, but it's a wide angle lens that you take the original cover off of that camera, which is just like, a blank piece of glass, and then put that on there. So I usually fly with a polarizing filter on, just it lives there. And if I want my wide angle, I have to take that off and put the wide angle on. So I have to make a choice there because I can't stack them.
Yeah, I'll research that. I'm kind of interested in that. And the other question I had was, I found a large reduction in the battery life in the 1.5 years that I've had my drone. And I'm thinking, boy, those are expensive batteries. If I have to replace those every year or two, I've actually set the battery life to come back down to, I think, 15%. And if the drone is near, I go all the way down to like 5%, so I can just land it and get it.
Okay.
But I'm thinking I'm ruining it's the battery history that it's remembering and reducing the life of the battery. Do you have any info on that?
I have no info on that, and from August 2018 to last November, I flew my Mavic 2 Pro a lot, and I did not find that.
I've got 3 batteries and I've noticed it with all 3, so I don't know if I'm
Okay.
just not draining the batteries enough.
Right.
Oh,
I can't speak to that because I did not have that problem. But I always have 3 batteries for my drones also, because there's nothing worse than to only have 30 minutes. And then when you're done with those 30 minutes, you see the best thing. And so I just land, get a new battery, and then keep going.
Thank you.
Yeah, are they lithium batteries? I take it they are.
They are, right. So
Yeah.
you cannot fly with them and put them in your checked luggage,
No,
but you can carry them on board with you. And
So
to be honest, I have never, I've gone to Italy, Ireland, the Faroe Islands, Iceland, Spain. I've flown through airports, through all those countries, going and coming, and I've had batteries in my carry-on all the time. I have never, ever had anybody ask me anything about them, one way or another.
Do you notice that you have less, the lithium batteries are better in the cold, I think. Have you noticed any wintertime problems with batteries?
No, there's always a temperature, range that your battery is made for. And, it goes down to like maybe freezing or something like that. Well, I've successfully flown, well, not the new one, not the Mini 3 Pro, but my other 2, I have flown in maybe up to 15 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. And I have never had any issues whatsoever. Now, yes, they're coming from a warm car in a warm house, so they haven't been sitting out in that temperature. They have to, get cold as they are flying, and as they're flying, they're warming up. So I just have not had any issues flying in super cold weather. I never fly because I don't like to put myself into 100-degree temperatures, so I don't have any experience in that.
Do you have any experience with nighttime photography? I learned a week or 2 ago shooting a lighthouse that I've got to do it when it's twilight.
Yeah, I have. There are. If you have a Part 107 license, you need a little addendum to truly fly at night. You need to put a strobe light on your drone that is visible for 3 miles. I'm not interested in doing anything like that, nor am I really interested in making night photographs. However, I've taken photographs well after sunset, but it's still, deep twilight. And usually I'm done and I'm coming home, when it's that. And my landing light always comes on, so there's an automatic landing light that comes on the bottom of the drone as I'm bringing it down, so.
great. Well, Dan, thank you very much. It was a great presentation. I know we had probably our highest number of participants at one of our meetings, and I didn't really expect that for a Thanksgiving weekend, but
Well,
especially on a nice day out too.
It's been my pleasure.
And I'm glad you could get your internet stuff worked out so you could come and do this for us. It's
Well, I have to thank Starlink for that, because that has gotten me into the internet modern era.
Yeah, that's great. It's I'm glad that's working. It's because it's great to have you come and do something like this. We got a lot of people got to see all your great photos, and
I mean, I've had Starlink a year and a half now, and I don't even think about it until somebody brings it up, like, oh, you have good connection or something like that.
yeah,
Otherwise, it's
yeah.
been utterly flawless.
Well, that's good to know, because every now and then I run into problems, and sounds interesting. And I know a number of people that don't have good internet, that maybe that's going to be an alternative for them. So,
Well, I had no speed whatsoever. None.
yeah,
My download
Right.
speed was 2.3.
yeah, yeah. And your signal has been just great. I mean, no breaking up, no nothing. So,
Mhm. Okay.
um,
I mean, that's my experience with it. So
yeah,
as I
No.
said, I just take it for granted now. I don't even think about it.
yeah, great. Well,
Dan,
again, thank you.
Dan, for your, if I can jump fast real quick here, for your fellow 107 pilots like myself and a few others on here, may we contact you with questions or advice or sharing or?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you share your contact information? I noticed it was on one slide. that
Yeah,
went
it
really
was,
fast.
it was on there. I mean, I don't know if you have pencil and paper, but
I do.
wait a minute. I can go back to that. I can go back to that frame. I can go back to the beginning and put it on there. There it is.
Thank you.
I have to say that
Everybody can just-
since I've gotten my drone and use it so much, I would say my output, forgetting about the swamp bios, you know, for the last 2 weeks ago, I took tremendous number of photographs with my R5 there. But outside of that, I would say my photo output is like 5-to-1 or 10-to-1 drone over my R5. That's how dependent I am on my drone to make still landscape photography. And when I put them on Facebook, many people have no clue that they are looking at a drone photograph because I'm low down. I'm just seeing it the way I think I should have seen it with a big tall tripod.
I'm glad that you said that because I'm a member of the drone group on the PSA digital dialogue groups. And most of the people in the group aren't thinking that way. I'm thinking of it as just another camera and how can I get a little different angle? And I comment on the pictures and try to communicate that exact idea to people.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a camera to me. A camera with a big tall tripod.
Right.
Yep.
And an
So
ability for me to zip around, you know, the area that I'm composing in much faster than I could walk, run, or whatever.
Right. Someone asked if you're thinking of doing any workshops.
You know, I'm really not. I don't know what I would do. I've certainly had plenty of people ask me to do that, but I have no clue what I would do for it.
Do you usually travel with groups or do you go on your own most of the time?
With a drone, I'm on my own, period. I mean, I lead photo groups, you know, and like I brought my little Mini 3 Pro to Italy in September, and I flew it a couple of times, and people in the group, I said, hey, I'm seeing something here that I want to use my drone for. You're very welcome to come with me and look over my shoulder and ask all the questions. And about half the people did, and about half the people just went off on their own. So, but no,
Dan, I bet if you did a drone workshop in the fall in Door County, you'd have more participants than you can shake a stick at.
but then I would have to go and fly with a whole bunch of people.
Oh, we could all be flying. It'd be like a big swarm.
Yeah, that sounds terrible to me, but
But if you do it with 4 or 5 people, I mean, there's a lot of sky up there.
well, no, I understand. And to be honest, when I was down at Caddo Lake, the other two guys I was with both had drones, and there were 2 times when we all did fly together. And so I now have, I can't say that I fly alone anymore because I've got 2 afternoons that I did fly with 2 other people. But I don't know what I would do with a workshop. All right, let me ask you guys, what would you want me to do?
Take us to beautiful places. And one of the things when I've taken workshops that's been really important is to get the people there at the right time. And that's, if I ever do tour photo tours or anything with people, I look for that.
Right.
Does the leader take
Yep.
us there in the middle of the day? Just
Yes.
regular photography. Does
Yes.
he take us there in the middle of the day, or does he get us
Yep.
there at the right time?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. The biggest thing for me is I do Photoshop workshops, and that's something, you know, that I can show people, and I can have them in my studio and do that. So I do that regularly. Well, not
I
regularly,
think,
but
Dan,
once a year.
that, you know, there's a number of us on here, as I mentioned, at our Part 107, but there's plenty of people interested in drones who are still hobbyists, haven't got the knowledge or experience. You brought up a lot of great points throughout your presentation, and really driving those home to people, maybe in person. I mean, the FAA does a pretty good job of trying to enforce or to reinforce, hey, these are the really important rules and why. But you know, to have somebody like yourself that's out there doing it in person, explaining here's what the rules are, here's why the rules are. You touched on a lot of things, but you know, we can go into depth on almost all those and spend the whole afternoon just talking about that, the
Right.
rules. You know,
Right.
those are the
However,
kind of things I think would be good.
However, I've gone into depth on those rules with you guys just now, about as deep as I ever go by myself. Because I mean, I know what I should do and shouldn't do, and therefore I know what they are. And there's not that many of them. So I'm much more interested in getting up there and looking for pictures, looking for photographs. That's what I'm after. And I, you know, I won't admit this out loud, but that rule that says you have to keep your drone within eyesight at all times is the number one stupid rule that I can think of. How do you know that if my eyesight is like a hawk or if I'm half blind? You know.
Well, yeah, and I get
So,
that. I think
ignore it.
the important thing there though is having the awareness of other aircraft in the area, or could potentially be in the area. You're in an area you don't get a lot of extraneous aircraft, but
Right.
I think that's the biggest reason to keep it in sight at all times from the FAA's viewpoint, from that safety factor. You know,
Right. No,
I'm
agree.
in central Wisconsin. You know, I see small aircraft flying. I know they're not flying at 400 feet. They're lower than that sometimes.
Yeah.
They're coming through here, and you know, if you're a ways, you know, if your distance is out 2 or 3 miles from where you're supposed to be, from that visual line of sight, it's hard to justify, okay, what's the distance between that aircraft and where you're at, and how quick do I need to bring myself down? And
Yeah.
you know, I you know, that's the safety aspect of it. And
Right,
I think, yeah, I get what you're saying. It'd be nice just to be able to go fly, because God knows our drones are capable of flying 4 or 5 miles out and away, and the newer ones even further. But that's well beyond visual line of sight.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. And and of course, another rule is that you're supposed to have a visual observer with you all the time too.
That's actually a recommendation, not a rule.
Okay. All right.
But it's a smart recommendation if
Right.
you're going to be doing what you're doing. If you're out flying that far away, you said it earlier. You know, you're looking at your control. You're not up, and I get it. I'm doing the same thing. You know,
Right,
you're alone. That's where it does help to have a visual observer, especially
Right.
if you're shooting any distances.
Right. Right. No, I mean, if I ever would fly out of visual line of sight, I know my area. I know where I am. I know what I'm doing. I know the time of day, and I can see there's nobody else around there. And so, you know, I'm reasonably comfortable with that. And, you know, as I said, well, no, I shouldn't say anything like that out loud.
One thing that you didn't mention, I understand why in your presentation, was the flying around airports. I live in the flight path of the Milwaukee Airport of MKE. And so I've had to deal with that a lot. I'm in the 400-foot zone, which is the outskirts, and I'm about
Right.
5 miles away from the airport, but I've gone closer to the parks, some of the areas near the coast down, and I've had to actually go through the process of getting the, Marty, you know what it's called, the LAANC
Right.
permit.
Yes, a Lance waiver.
Yeah, Lance, is that how you pronounce it?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's something that I've had to deal with, and I'm constantly on the watch. I've watched flight radar, and the planes that come over my house are about, the lowest I've seen is about 1,500 feet, so I know
Right.
it's not a problem.
Right.
But
And,
one
and
thing,
airport rules now are a little different than when I first started. There, it was just a circle. And now it's the extension of the flight runways. So you can go a lot closer from the side of the runway, not super, but you can go closer than you can in terms of the approach or takeoff, extension.
right,
So
one
that's
thing
different.
I've had to be careful with is, and Marty, you might be able to speak to this. When I've been closer towards downtown, there's some hospitals down there, and I've been concerned about the helicopters. I've seen them come over the water and that they're
Absolutely.
landing at the airport, and those aren't on the any reports or anything. I
Oh, really?
guess just a matter of having to keep an eye out for them. Marty, do you know anything about that?
Actually, I think if you're gonna get flagged, you will get flagged for things like hospitals, because I have because of the helicopters. You'll get flagged for prisons, for other facilities. You should be getting flagged for some of that stuff if you're flying in restricted areas, somewhat restricted areas.
I agree.
Well,
I agree.
What do you mean by flagged? The hospitals don't have circles on I look at ALOF, it's now another name, but the ALOF program, and they don't have circles around the hospitals. Sports facilities, they do.
Yeah, but if it's flight for life in the air, you're gonna get overruled in that St. Mary is a person's life is more important than your
Oh,
drone.
definitely.
You gotta be real fussy. Same thing with freighter and that.
Right. Right.
God forbid, something happens and you crash into a flight for life, and that there's gonna be some major issues.
I mean,
Oh, of
this is where
course.
this is where common sense rules the day.
Well, you're gonna see flight for life anywhere in the county, coming and going.
Right, right. I had an interesting experience in the UP this last fall. I was in a national forest and there was a little pond. I was on the edge of it and I wanted to fly over it and check it out. My drone would not take off. And I looked on the screen and it said I was in an NFZ zone. Well, I had no clue what that was, never knew about this. And so I had to look it up. I had to get back in my car, get my iPad out. What is an NFC? It's a no-fly zone. And my drone would not take off. And that's because the FAA or whoever, I guess was, I don't know, FAA.
That was probably more DJI than anything, but yeah.
Well, but the whole national forest, all boundaries of it were under this NFZ, and no drone. I looked where the fire was because I was very aware of that. It was about 40 miles away from me. And so what I did is I looked on my map. I said, oh, I'm about a mile from the edge of the national forest. Well, I went outside the edge of the national forest and zoom, away I went. So
how close were you to K.I. Sawyer? That's the only thing up there I could think of that would flag that.
this was up near the boundary waters. So I was nowhere near Sawyer.
Okay, yeah,
I was nowhere near any airport at all.
right, that you knew about.
Exactly.
I know
wasn't
once in a
getting
while.
Right. I wasn't getting any, anything like that. I have a grass strip airport that, to my knowledge, not a single plane has gone off or on since the owner died up here, but it still is listed as an airport.
Yeah.
And I still get mildly scolded if I'm near it.
Yeah,
doesn't
and I
stop
guess,
me. It
drama,
doesn't
that's
stop
what,
me or
when I say
anything, so I ignore it.
yeah, when I say getting flagged, drama, that's kind of what I mean. I've flown near some small airstrips like that too, and it'll come up as a warning that, hey, there's this little airstrip near you. And
Right.
it's basically telling you, just be aware and
Exactly.
be careful in those areas.
Right.
Well, those warnings, I thought they came from DJI.
No, those are FAA
Right.
Okay.
things.
Yep, yep.
Now, another thing, like what you mentioned about, that you couldn't lift up your drone. I know when the president shows up at Mitchell and that most likely no drones will be able to even get up in the air because everything's restricted.
Yep, they will have a temporary NFZ zone in so many miles around there.
Correct.
Absolutely. Just like, it's a cordon that no private airplane can get near there. So I'm sure I've never, of course, seen that, never tried it, never been near the president, but I am sure that there'd be an NFZ zone, following him around the whole time.
Well, even too, the one even West Bend, that's a temporary no-fly zone too in that because it's within the 15 miles. You can fly. How do I understand it? I think it's 5 miles. You can't be within 5 miles, but then if it's 15 miles, you can fly through if you're on a flight plan. Let's say a commercial airliner.
I don't know where you're talking about. West Bend, you said?
Yeah, West Bend. West
What
Bend
is-
is like 35 miles, or I forget exactly how far it's outside of Milwaukee, but it's still
Oh.
within one of the restriction areas.
Okay. See, I have zero experience from any of these things because I am never, ever near a city, near airports, nothing. So I've lived a charmed life, but it's been on purpose.
Yeah, I get that, Dan. In fact, one of our listeners on here is from Louisville, and she lives like right in Louisville, and she's the one that got me into drones a number of years ago. And yeah, it's been frustration beyond belief for her because she's in a big city. She's
Right.
learned how to navigate that and to kind of get around some of those, but it's tough. You're spoiled. I'm spoiled.
Right?
Most of us
I
live
am.
in rural areas. Yeah,
I mean,
we get away with a lot that other
I'm a
people can't.
landscape photographer. So if I lived in the city, if I wanted to make a shot with my R5 or my drone, I'd have to leave the city and go find wild places, landscape rich environments. And, I happen to live in one of those, so I don't have to worry about that. That's one of the,
Right,
that's
right.
one of the, when I had that screen up that said the cons of drone of drone flying, where you live can be a big con, but it is not
Absolutely.
for me. It's a big pro for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what's
And it
nice
shows in the work.
Right.
What's nice is you get all the fog in that. I mean, you get some great, shots, with the trees in that. Beautiful, beautiful pictures.
There's not enough fog for me up here. I wish there was a lot more, but I try never to pass up an opportunity with fog around, but
It's hard because, every day, everyone says about the right time. Well, that's half the equation. You also got to have the right weather too. I mean, you can have a
Absolutely.
horrible whole week of nothing but
Right,
horrible
right.
weather.
right. I used to do a winter photo workshop here in Door County, and I just stopped doing it. I was doing it with Suzanne Rose, and we stopped doing it just because it was so incredibly stressful for the weeks leading up to it that we were going to have winter, because Door County, if you want to see ice and snow in the winter, you can't just poke your nose on a calendar date and come. You may have rain, so it got to the point where we had too many years where we had 50 degrees, and we said, it's not worth the stress of leading up to these things. So we just stopped.
Correct. Well, like what you're describing, I believe it last year for Christmas, it was 54 degrees, I think, at least down here.
Right.
And then it was actually warmer for Christmas and Easter down here. It was cold. It was snowing on Easter for the
Right.
next day.
Right. So, I mean, the right to be there at the right time. I don't care what photography you're doing, where it is, that trumps everything. To be there when conditions are correct. And they're not sitting in my calendar.
You did, I have to say, you did an excellent job on your presentation. I mean, you basically hit every single thing. It was a great, wide, broad range of everything, detailing what drone photography, what you have to do, what elements you got to fight with, and that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, good presentation.
A lot of
Thanks.
great information too. A lot of, yeah, it's great.
Good. I appreciate it. It was fun doing.
Well, again, thank you, Dan. Really appreciate you coming and doing this.
It's my pleasure.
And we've pretty much gone, well, 45 minutes over. Not too bad. We tend to gab a lot in this group, so it's a loose group, and none of us usually have many places to go. But
I mean, I have had other groups ask me to give a presentation, not on drone, but just on whatever, and I've done a lot of them. And so I always ask, how long do you want me to talk? Because I mean, I'm only quasi joking when I say that I could take this group of images that I'm going to show, and I could do 2 hours, or I could do all day.
yeah.
So
Yeah, we don't mind going over. We lose people as it gets later on. Now
right.
we're down to 21 from 41,
Okay.
42 that we had for a high.
Okay.
But it's always so interesting to see the different speakers' stuff and your stuff. You know, I don't get to see your stuff all that often. This was really a nice treat to be able to watch it.
If you're on Facebook, that's where the new stuff always goes first.
Okay,
So
I'll have to
my
plug
Facebook
that one
page,
in.
You'll see all the new things way before they get on my website.
Okay.
Although my trip to the bayous, that will be a new gallery on my website, but it won't be there for a while either. Meanwhile,
Sure.
the shots that I'm working up, they're already on my Facebook page, but whatever.
You know, with
Yep.
all the time that you do with flying, taking pictures, then, you know, photoshopping the pictures, editing, and then you got to do all this posting on all the different types of, you know, like your website, Facebook. That's a lot of time consuming involved.
It is. The good news is that there are a few things that I love to do more than edit my photos at my computer. I really enjoy that. Some people absolutely hate it. I am the opposite end of the spectrum. I love doing it, but that helps.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah,
with
I
you.
enjoy doing it too. It's to me, it's a lot of fun to sit behind the computer and work on the photos. And
Oh, I love it.
you mean sometimes you don't have to do a lot to a photo, but there are times when you got to do quite a bit.
Right. I always joke about this subject that if I ever, and I haven't, if I ever had an image that floated onto my screen from my compact flash card or SD card, and it needs absolutely nothing, I would have to dodge a corner and then burn it back in.
Yeah. Yep.
And quick question, has there ever been a picture it's like, oh, I just can't save this picture no matter what I'm doing? You know, there's a few I've done. It's like, I just can't,
Oh,
I can't save it.
I've got a lot of those. I really do. I mean, if I don't see progress and I don't see potential, I've got so many others that I could be working on that I just quit and go to something that I like better. And it's usually how I'm responding to it. Am I falling more and more in love with this image and I'm feeling even stronger about it? If not, forget it. I'm gone. I'm working on something else.
Yeah.
So yes,
that's what I find.
I do not soldier on until it's right. I've got to see progress, or I abandon it and go on to something that has more potential.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because there's a few is like, oh, I just can't do anything with this and that.
Right,
And it's just
right.
like, it's like I'm going the opposite direction in that instead
Exactly,
of making the
exactly,
picture better, it's
right.
making it worse.
Yes, and I'm falling more out of love with it every minute, and then I quit. So yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I suppose I'll probably gotta get some yard work done because it's pretty nice in that down here. I think it's 52 degrees.
I'm looking outside. It's 51 here, and I'm looking out, and it's nice and sunny outside. So
Yep. Time to
Well,
get some
Dan,
other work.
thanks
done,
very
I
much,
guess.
Dan. I appreciate
thank
it
you
all.
very, very, very much. And what do I do to get out of here now?
Just have to go and click leave and,
Stop share, first of all.
yeah, stop
Here's
share.
Do that. Yep.
Stop share. All right. Oh, there it is.
And go- and
Now
then you
I've
can
got
hit
all
the
of you
leave.
again, and now I'm going to leave. So adios.
Take
Yep.
care, Dan. Thank you.
We'll see you, Dan. Thank you very much.
You're well.